Hey, sleepy friends. Welcome back to Boring History for Sleep. Wherever you are tonight, I hope you're safe, warm, and ready to drift off while we wander through the hushed corners of the past. Take a slow breath. Let your shoulders drop. And if you'd like, leave me a comment below. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always comforting to know who's out there, drifting through these quiet stories together. So close your eyes, get comfortable, and let's slip softly into the pages of forgotten history. Imagine the first thing you feel each morning is the deck shifting gently beneath your bare feet. Your boots lie forgotten near your hammock, damp and sour from yesterday's rain. You blink awake to the creak of timber, the slap of ropes, the low mutter of men already up before dawn, patching sails or mending nets. A pirate sloop is not large. Every plank, every coil of rope, every nail has been scavenged, bartered, or stolen, patched together from the bones of other ships. The salt air scrapes your throat raw, but it's better than the bilge stench below. Down there, the air is thick with sour beer, rotting food scraps, and the musty breath of too many unwashed bodies packed tight in a space meant for cargo, not men. The first thing you do is check the ration barrel. A ladle full of stale water, sharp with the taste of algae and metal. If you're lucky, a lump of salted pork hard as driftwood, or a handful of weevil-riddled ship's biscuit. You scrape off the black specks and try not to think about how many weeks it's been since you last tasted anything fresh. Above deck, the sails belly in the wind, patched canvas like a patchwork quilt stitched by ghosts. Some patches are French linen, others Dutch canvas, trophies from ships taken in desperate raids. Each stitch carries the story of a skirmish, a bargain, a promise made, and broken at cutlass point. Look around you. The crew is a collection of the unwanted and the unwilling, escaped indentured servants, runaways, sailors who jumped ship when the Navy's lashes grew too cruel. Some men are tattooed with strange symbols, faded blue ink spelling out oaths to the sea. Others bear the rough scars of cat-o'-nine tails across their shoulders. And yet, here, they stand as equals for now. A boy no older than 15 scrambles up the rigging, his bare toes gripping the ratlins slick with salt spray. He calls out the shape of a distant sail, and suddenly the deck buzzes with whispers. Merchantman? Navy? Prize? Or death? A single ship can decide your fate for weeks to come. Enough coin for fresh food, rum, maybe a night on shore, or a fight that leaves bodies drifting like seaweed in the wake. Your quartermaster eyes the horizon, weighing the risks. He is no gentle steward. He decides the share of plunder, the punishment for theft, the portion of rum rations that will steady men's hands before the cannons fire. His voice is calm, but iron hard. On a pirate ship, democracy lives alongside the threat of sudden violence. For every man here has signed the articles, the pirate code that binds you tighter than any king's law. Your hands are rough from hauling lines. Your knuckles are scabbed from wrestling barrels in the hold during last night's squall. You remember the smell of the storm, wet canvas, sweat, and the sharp tang of lightning as it danced close enough to split the mainmast. Even the simplest chores feel like battle, pumping out bilge water, patching the hull from inside with tar and rags to stop the sea from swallowing you whole. The deck is never dry. A thin sheen of brine crusts the boards, making every step a gamble for your bones. But when dusk falls, the horizon turns molten gold and purple, and the sea softens to a hush. Men gather near the forecastle. Someone hums a tune from home, a low shanty about a woman in Bristol or a sweetheart in Kingston. You rest your back against a coil of rope, eyes half shut, the sway of the ship rocking you like a cradle. For now, you are safe. For now, your share of the sea is yours, salt-bitten, bruised, and alive. No captain's promise, no king's pardon can make tomorrow certain. But tonight, under the wide sky, you drift. The soft slap of waves on the hull, the gentle snap of the flag overhead. You taste freedom in every breath, rough, rotten, beautiful. And when you close your eyes at last, it's not dreams of treasure that come. It's the steady rhythm of the ship, the hush of wind through rigging, the comfort of knowing that here, among thieves and outcasts, you've found a home on the edge of the known world. Picture yourself below deck now, slipping down the steep wooden ladder into the ship's cramped belly. The air here is damp, close, and flickering with the faint glow of a swinging lantern. The boards creak under your bare feet as you make your way past barrels of stale water and crates, marked with faded names of merchant ports long plundered. This is where the pirate code lives, not as an iron-bound law, but as a pact inked by every hand on board. Tattered parchment, nailed to the mainmast or tucked in the quartermaster's chest, read aloud when a new man signs on. The rules are simple, yet absolute. All plunder is shared according to rank and risk. Betrayal is met with swift punishment. And above all, no fighting amongst yourselves while at sea. The quartermaster keeps watch over this fragile sense of fairness. He's no captain's pet. On many ships, he wields more day-to-day power than the captain himself. Imagine him now, broad-shouldered, shirt sleeves rolled to the elbow, hands rough from rope and iron shackles alike. He stands before the men in the feeble light, his eyes calm, his voice steady as he lays out a ruling. A man is accused of sneaking an extra measure of rum, dipping his tin mug when the others slept. The penalty? A simple theft on land might earn a cuff around the ear or a night in the stocks. But here, locked together on a drifting island of splintered wood, trust is everything. A thief among pirates is more dangerous than a Navy frigate on the horizon. You watch as the quartermaster questions the man. He says little, only what needs saying. The accused tries to stammer excuses, his face slick with sweat in the lantern light. But the code is clear. By a show of hands, the crew confirms the truth. The punishment must fit the crime, yet not spill more blood than needed. Sometimes it's lashes, the rope biting the back until red stripes stand out like the seams on a sail. Sometimes, if the crime cuts deeper, mutiny, murder, a betrayal that risks every life on board, the sea itself becomes the judge. The guilty is marooned, given a pistol with a single shot, and left to the mercy of the wind and sun. Yet the code isn't just about punishment. It's also a shield for the weak. A man who loses an eye or a limb in a raid earns a greater share of the plunder forever after. Food rations are portioned with strict fairness. No captain feasting while the deckhands starve. When a prize is taken, the surgeon, if they have one, is paid the same as the gunners and the sailors. It's a rough democracy, bound by fear and need and the promise of freedom that no crown can grant. Picture the men gathered in a circle now, boots braced against the pitch-dark boards, breath hanging in the cold dawn air that slips through the hatch. The quartermaster rolls the parchment and tucks it away. One more ruling done. One more day of fragile order on this lawless floating world. Outside, the sea waits, indifferent, eternal. But here in the hush below deck, a fragile brotherhood holds steady. You lie back against the barrel, your eyes growing heavy as the ship rocks you deeper into the hush of pirate justice, where freedom and fear share the same narrow plank. Breathe slowly now. Feel the creak of the ship's timbers under you, the hush of wind whistling through the rigging above. Picture yourself standing at the bow, salt spray stinging your cheeks as a wall of gray clouds builds on the horizon. Out here, a storm isn't just wind and water. It's a test of will and belief. A force as alive in the pirate's mind as any king or god. Superstitions run deep on this ship. Some men stitch tiny charms into the hems of their shirts. Bits of bone, a copper coin, a scrap of sail from the last ship they served on. Others whisper prayers to St. Elmo when the blue fire flickers along the masts, calling it a sign that the saint is watching over their vessel. And all of them, hardened cutthroats though they may be, glance nervously at the albatross that sometimes circles overhead. Kill that bird, they say, and you've doomed the ship. As the clouds gather, the men lash down the cannons and reef the sails. The captain paces the deck, shouting orders over the rising wind, while the quartermaster watches the horizon with an eye for escape routes, for a pirate caught in a gale is as much prey as predator. You haul rope alongside them, hands burning, back aching. The sea spray soaks your hair, tastes briny on your lips. When the storm hits, the world shrinks to a howling blur of salt and roar and the sharp snap of canvas overhead. In these moments, the unwritten rules of the sea press hardest on the pirate mind. You do not whistle into the wind. They say it calls the devil. You do not speak of tomorrow when the waves are high. Better to focus on the next heartbeat, the next wave. Some men murmur that the sea has a will of its own, that it chooses who to spare and who to swallow. Below deck, the hold floods and trickling streams, sloshing between barrels of rum and powder. A man prays in a corner, fingering the wooden beads around his wrist. Another carves a line into the mast with his knife, one for every storm survived, a quiet ledger of borrowed time. Then, as sudden as it came, the tempest passes. The clouds drift apart, the wind dies to a whisper. Ragged sails hang limp, soaked and torn at the edges. The men stand at the rail, staring at the calm water as if it's some rare, delicate thing they might break by breathing too loud. And in this hush after the fury, you understand why these superstitions cling so tight. When your life rides on creaking planks and canvas, when a single wave can end it all, the smallest charm or whispered vow feels like a thin rope to hold you fast. Out here, the storm writes its own commandments. No crown, no admiralty court, no governor's edict can match the sea's quiet, merciless power. So you stand with them now, the salt drying on your skin, your eyes heavy as the rocking of the ship lulls you back toward sleep. The sea is calm, for now. But you know in your bones that storms will come again, and with them the hush of superstition that binds pirate souls together beneath their tattered flag. Settle in now. The storm has passed. The deck glistens with lingering puddles of salt water. Lanterns sway gently from the beams, and you can almost hear the soft creak of the ropes overhead as you wander deeper into this drifting world of shadows and whispered vows. Life aboard this ship is not the wild chaos you might imagine. Pirates, for all their lawless fame, live by codes far stricter than many merchant crews or navy vessels. They must. When you sleep in hammocks inches apart from cutthroats and men who've run from the gallows, the only thing holding your throat safe in the night is the fragile web of rules you've all agreed to keep. Imagine yourself sitting in the flickering lamplight below deck. A battered piece of parchment is nailed to the main mast, the pirate articles. Each man had his say when they were drafted, scrawling marks with clumsy hands if they couldn't write their names. The rules spell out who gets what share of loot. The captain may get 2 shares, the quartermaster 2 as well, but the rest divide their gold equally. If you lose an arm, an eye, a leg in service of the crew, you're due compensation, more than most navies would ever grant. Every man has a voice here, at least in theory. The quartermaster, elected by the crew, carries almost as much power as the captain, keeping him in check when tempers run high or greed threatens to tip the ship into ruin. Justice, when needed, is rough but clear. Cheating your mates out of their fair share might see you marooned on some forgotten spit of sand with nothing but a flask of water. And in the hush of night, when the sea is calm and the gold is counted, you'd be surprised how quickly a whisper of mutiny can slip from bunk to bunk. Picture the captain now, pacing the quarterdeck, eyes scanning the horizon for prey or signs of betrayal among his own. He knows his power hangs by a thread spun from fear and respect. Too harsh, and the men might cast him overboard. Too weak, and the ship splinters into factions, each man with his own ambition, his own knife hidden in his boot. Below, you lie in your hammock, feeling the gentle sway. You hear the soft shuffle of boots on the planks above, the faint hush of voices in the hold, men murmuring about the next prize, about the captain's choices, about how fat the Spanish galleon's hold might be. One man wonders aloud if the quartermaster's been skimming a bit extra into his pocket. The words are quiet, but they slide through the bunks like smoke, wrapping around you as you drift towards sleep. Yet for all the tension, this strange democracy is what binds you. Here, you are no man's slave, no press-ganged deckhand. You voted for this ship, this captain, this code. And when the sails fill with wind and the lookout's cry pierces, the salt air, sail ho, you remember why you endured the storm, the rot, the constant threat of betrayal. For your share of the gold, yes, but more than that, for the wild freedom of it, the hush of the sea, the crack of the cannons, and the knowledge that, for a while at least, you answer to no king but the rolling waves. So you let your eyes slip closed again, the sway of the hammock cradling you like a lullaby, the whisper of pirate codes echoing in the dark. Your share, your say, your ship, until the next storm, the next raid, the next chance to gamble it all on the black water. Stay with me now. The ship rolls gently under your feet as you wander to yet another hidden corner of this drifting world. Beyond the creaking bunks and the whispered talk of mutiny, there's a place few care to linger, the makeshift sick bay, tucked near the stern where the smell of brine mixes with old blood and stale rum. Imagine it, a rough wooden table, dark stains ground deep into the grain. A battered sea chest stands open, filled not with gold or jewels, but with cruel-looking saws, needles, rolls of linen, and a bone-handled knife that's been sharpened. So many times its edge glitters in the lamplight. Your ship's surgeon, if you have one, is not a learned man in the eyes of polite society. More often than not, he's a barber or a former naval medic who took to piracy to escape the lash or the press gangs. His experience is written in the scars on his hands and the weary slump of his shoulders. Picture yourself now, sitting on the edge of that table, your arm laid bare. The surgeon swabs a rag soaked in rum across a wound, maybe a splintered bullet lodged in the flesh, or a gash from a boarding cutlass. The burn of the alcohol makes your eyes water, and you bite down on a strip of leather to keep from crying out. No one wants to hear a man scream when the sea is calm. There is no anesthetic but drink and willpower. The surgeon works quickly, with the ship rolling under him. Sometimes you catch his muttered prayers, not for your soul, but for his fingers to stay steady as he digs out the shot. A slip of the blade could mean fever, infection, or worse. If the wound's bad enough, an arm shattered beyond saving, the saw comes out. Rough iron teeth bite through flesh and bone, while two mates hold you down. The deck will need scrubbing after, sawdust scattered under your stump to catch the worst of the blood. Yet, as grim as it is, there's a strange camaraderie here. Men who would cut each other's throats over a coin will stand by while you recover, passing you rum and telling tales of their own scars. They know that on this ship, every able hand counts. Every man lost to the deep is a share divided fewer ways, but also another back missing when the sails must be hauled or the cannons run out. Once the wound is dressed, you lie back in your hammock. The salt air stings the stitches when the wind shifts. You drift half awake, half dreaming, the gentle hush of the waves mixing with the groan of timbers overhead. Somewhere above, the lookout calls to the captain. A sail on the horizon. But for now, you do not care. You've survived the surgeon's table. For tonight, that's enough. In the pirate's world, you're always one storm, one boarding party, one unlucky splinter away from the surgeon's saw. It is a constant truth, whispered beneath the roar of the cannon and the crack of sails. You breathe it in like salt air, letting it carry you deeper into the hush of this drifting life at sea. Let your mind drift now. The surgeon's lantern fades behind you as you climb back up to the creaking deck. The salt wind carries the scent of tar and rope, a steady splash of waves against the hull. Above your head, the black flag ripples in the moonlight, a skull, crossed bones, or sometimes an hourglass, each a promise and a threat all at once. You might think a pirate ship is a place of lawlessness, a drifting realm where each man answers only to himself. But lean closer. Beneath the rum and reckless laughter, there is order here. Without it, the chaos would swallow the crew whole long before the Navy ever caught up to them. Imagine you're there now, standing among your shipmates as the captain unrolls a battered piece of parchment, the ship's articles, the pirate code, a contract scratched in rough ink, signed with crude marks by every soul aboard. It lays out exactly how your floating world works. Who gets what share of plunder? What happens if someone steals from his mates? How quarrels are settled. Picture the lines. No striking one another on board ship, but every man's quarrels shall be ended on shore at sword and pistol. Every man shall have an equal vote in affairs of moment. If any man lose a limb or become crippled in the service, he shall have compensation from the common stock. You stand there, salt drying on your lips, and you realize, in some ways, it is more fair than any king's court. A harsh fairness, maybe, but clear. Break the code, and punishment is swift. Maybe lashes, maybe marooning on some barren shore, with a pistol and a single shot, a lonely end beneath the wheeling gulls. These articles are read aloud whenever a new man joins the crew. Picture yourself scratching your name, or your mark, at the bottom, swearing to uphold the code. From that moment on, you are bound to these men by more than plunder. You share the same dangers, the same feasts of salt pork and hard tack, the same fleeting comforts when the weather turns warm and the sails hang slack at dawn. At night, by the glow of a lantern, the quartermaster might count out the shares after a raid. A single coin dropped overboard means a muttered curse and a note in the ledger. Even the captain's share is set, larger than yours perhaps, but not by much. This is no king and his peasants. This is an uneasy democracy of rogues and killers, bound by an understanding that tomorrow's cannon blast could send you all to the same cold depths. When the code is kept, the ship sails smooth. There is laughter on the deck, songs drifting out over the black water, a sense that the next prize waits just beyond the horizon. But the code is a blade held at the throat of greed. And sometimes, when gold and rum loosen tongues, even the articles can't keep blood from the planks. So you lie in your hammock, the code's words echoing in your head, a strange comfort in this life without walls. The code is the ship's heartbeat, a harsh promise that here, at least, every man knows where he stands, until the wind shifts, the sails fill, and the horizon swallows your brotherhood whole. Take a slow breath. Feel the roll of the deck beneath your bare feet, the sharp salt of the sea on your tongue. The code might bind men to each other, but there is no code that binds the ocean. And for a pirate, the sea is both your mother and your executioner. Imagine you are halfway through a long voyage. The Caribbean sun has given way to black skies. A squall brews on the horizon, a bruised line of thunderclouds that seem to crawl closer with every shudder of the mast. You've heard the old hands muttering under their breath, touching charms stitched into pockets, twisting rings on weathered fingers. Even the boldest pirate harbors old sailors' fears. The sea is alive, and it listens. The wind comes first, a howling voice through the rigging that pulls at your hair, stings your eyes. The sails are reefed, but still they snap and crack like whips above your head. Rain lashes the deck, turning it slick as the belly of a fish. You haul rope with raw palms, squint through the downpour, the taste of salt and fear mixing on your lips. When the thunder hits, it shakes the bones of the ship. Some of the crew cross themselves. Some spit over the side to appease the restless spirits below. You remember the tailies, ghost ships that glide silently through the fog, cursed men doomed to sail forever, a Flying Dutchman that drags down all who glimpse her tattered sails. Below deck, water seeps through the seams, dripping cold on your hammock. A rat scurries across the beam above your head. A good omen, some say, for if the rats abandon ship, you'd best follow them. But no one is leaving tonight. The storm holds you in its wet, roaring fist. Picture the helmsman, a rope tied around his waist to keep him from being flung overboard. The captain barks orders, voice barely rising above the wind's scream. The men obey, not for the captain, but for the chance to see another sunrise. You wedge your shoulder against the mainmast, muscles burning as you help wrestle the rigging under control. Hours pass like this, the storm's fury, your own breath ragged in your chest, the constant dread that one wave might snap the hull like a bone. And then, as suddenly as it began, the wind sighs and the clouds break apart like ragged sails. Dawn slips over the horizon, pale gold brushing the battered deck. In that calm, you hear the superstitious whispers again. Some say the storm was punishment for some sailor's crime. Others blame the green flash of a mermaid's tail, glimpsed just before the squall hit. No matter, the sea has spared you, this time. And so the pirates gather their courage like coin, dry their soaked clothes in the rising sun, and offer up quiet thanks to whatever spirits might be listening in the deep. By nightfall, the storm is already a memory, just another tale for the next port tavern, when the pirate's cup is full and the wind outside is gentle. But you, lying awake in your hammock, feel the deck creak beneath you, and wonder when the sea will call you to account again. Settle in now. The storm has passed. The sea is calm, but aboard a pirate ship, danger doesn't always come from the waves. Sometimes the fiercest squall rises from within, a storm of whispered doubts, clenched fists and blades hidden beneath rough-spun shirts. Picture yourself on deck in the hush before dawn. The sails hang loose, the ship drifts on a glassy sea, the only sound the creak of the timbers and the occasional splash of a fish below. Somewhere in the shadows, a conversation unfurls like a snake uncoiling. Voices low, tense, too soft for the quartermaster to hear. You see the glances passed at the captain's cabin. You feel the shift in the air, as certain men stand closer together at meals, their laughter sharp and hollow. The pirate code, so proudly displayed and sworn to when you signed on, binds you all to an idea of brotherhood, of shared loot and equal say. But greed has its own hunger, and some men never feel they've had their fair share. It might begin with a single slight. Perhaps the captain favored an old friend in the division of spoils. Perhaps the quartermaster turned a blind eye when his mates claimed a larger ration of rum. Or maybe it's fear. The captain's last raid drew the Navy's eye, and the gallows loom large in every man's mind. Mutiny simmers like a stew gone sour. You imagine yourself caught in the middle. Do you side with the old sea dog who's led you to plunder and profit, or the charismatic loudmouth promising more coin, less risk, and new adventures? Some men look at the horizon and see freedom. Others look at the captain and see an anchor dragging them down. When mutiny breaks, it can be as silent as a knife in the dark, or as loud as a musket fired in the captain's quarters. You see the door kicked open, the captain dragged from his bunk, half-dressed and cursing. Sometimes there's blood, his spilled life staining the deck. Other times, the captain bargains, promising a larger share, more rations, a new prize waiting over the horizon. And if the mutiny succeeds, the new captain, once your equal, stands at the helm, boots planted wide, hand on the wheel. Maybe he's fair. Maybe he's worse than the one you turned out. The pirate code allows for it, after all. The crew chooses the captain. The crew can cast him aside. But every coup plants seeds of doubt. If it happened once, it can happen again. Imagine the hush that falls afterward. Men scrub the deck where the old captain's blood has dried. A few coin purses are quietly redistributed. And you stand by the rail, staring at the endless sea, wondering if the promise of brotherhood is real, or just another tale spun to keep your hands on a rope and your eyes on the prize. Yet somehow life goes on. The sails fill again. The ship turns toward the next port, and the new captain makes his speech. He swears you'll be richer than ever before, safer than you've been. You nod along, but deep inside, you know that on a pirate ship, loyalty is only as strong as a man's hunger, and the sea is always there to swallow your secrets whole. Breathe slowly now, rocking with the gentle sway of the ship as you leave the whispers of mutiny behind. The sea is calm tonight. Moonlight dances like coins scattered across the water's surface, guiding you toward shore. Ahead, hidden among the mangroves or behind a jagged coral reef, lies the promise of safe harbor, the pirate haven. Imagine it, a crescent of soft sand, torches flickering between palm trees, crude huts thrown up beside barrels of rum and crates of stolen silk. Nassau, Tortuga, Port Royal. Names that echo through history, half myth, half truth. These places were the heartbeat of the pirate world, where the law was as thin as the salt breeze and the king's men kept their distance, at least for a time. You step off the longboat, feet sinking into warm sand, the smell of roasting pork drifting on the wind. Around you, men and women laugh loud and easy, their voices tangled with the strains of a fiddler's tune. Here, the code of the sea gives way to the code of the tavern. No questions asked, no grudges carried across the threshold. In the hush of a back alley, gold pieces slip from palm to palm. Cavern keepers and brothel madams do brisk business, no moral judgments made on where that coin came from. You can almost feel the warmth of the rum in your belly, the sting of salt on your skin as you watch pirates swagger down narrow streets, pockets heavy with plunder. But pirate havens are more than mere dens of vice. They are tiny republics in defiance of empire, a place where outcasts forge their own rules. Listen closely, and you'll hear debates about ships to chase, merchants to rob, which corrupt governor might look the other way for a share of the loot. These safe ports were fragile sanctuaries, always at risk of betrayal or sudden crackdown. You imagine the tension that lies beneath the revelry, the constant fear that a Navy ship will appear on the horizon, cannons primed to burn the settlement to the ground. And yet, for a time, these hidden coves offered pirates something precious: rest for weary bodies, freedom from the lash and chain, a place where even the lowest sailor could speak his mind. Picture yourself drifting through the crooked lanes of Tortuga. Lanterns swing gently, casting warm circles of light on sailors sprawled outside taverns. You might trade your share of silver for new boots, a bottle of rum, or a night of fleeting comfort in a candlelit room above the inn. In the end, you'll return to the sea. The haven is only a pause, a heartbeat between storms. But in this lull, with your back to a palm tree and your mind heavy with rum, you dream of a life where you might stay on land forever. You know better, though. A sea always calls you back. Take a deep breath and let the music of the pirate haven fade behind you. The clink of mugs, the laughter that echoes like gulls. Now you stand at the foot of the quarterdeck, looking up at the figure who holds every life aboard in the calloused palm of their hand, the pirate captain. In your mind's eye, see him or her there against the dawn. A battered tricorn shadowing sharp eyes that miss nothing. A coat once stolen from some officer or merchant, now salt-stiff and patched with trophies from a dozen ships taken on stormy seas. Some captains were gentle, fatherly figures who won their crew's loyalty with fair shares and clear orders. Others ruled with a lash and pistol, inspiring terror that kept mutiny at bay. Imagine the rise of Blackbeard, whose tangled beard was said to be threaded with slow-burning fuses, sparks dancing around his weathered face. He loomed so large in the minds of colonial governors that entire squadrons were dispatched just to hunt him down. Or picture Anne Bonny, red hair streaming in the wind, pistol drawn as she stood her ground on a deck slick with rain and rebellion. In these figures, myth and truth tangled tighter than any sailor's knot. Pirate captains were elected, a democracy of rogues that surprised the lords of empire. One day, a man might scrub the deck. The next, he could be raised by vote to command. But woe to the captain who betrayed the code. Too greedy with shares? Too cowardly in battle? Too quick to run to the Navy for a pardon? The crew would gather, hands raised in judgment, and a new leader would rise. Breathe in the salt air as you drift through this memory. Hear the captain's voice barking orders above the roar of a gale. Haul the main, reef the topsails. Feel the shock of cold spray on your cheeks as the crew scrambles to obey. A good captain knew every plank and rope of their ship, and every fear and hunger of the men who sailed beneath them. And yet, the power was fleeting. A broadside from a man-o' fare, a whisper of betrayal, a gold-laden deal struck behind the tavern shutters. All could end a captain's reign overnight. Their glory was stitched together from plunder and promise, always one storm away from ruin. So, rest here at the foot of the quarterdeck for a moment longer. Imagine the captain's boots thumping past, spurs catching the lantern light. Their gaze sweeps the deck, eyes sharp as a hawk's. They know the sea better than any chart, and they know you, the weary sailor, the dreaming historian, drifting through this forgotten world. And when you feel ready, take one last look at that coat snapping in the wind, the battered hat, the pistol tucked at their belt. The captain turns toward the horizon, and you follow, slipping deeper into this long hush of waves and whispering sails. Let the creak of the quarterdeck fade behind you now. Imagine your feet moving down the narrow steps, one careful tread at a time. The light grows dimmer as you descend into the belly of the pirate ship, the hold. Down here, lanterns swing like sleepy fireflies, throwing flickering shadows across barrels, crates, and canvas-wrapped bundles. Take a slow breath. The air is thick, a mix of tar, salt, and the faint scent of damp wood. Somewhere, the slow drip of water echoes like a heartbeat. This is where the stolen wealth of the sea comes to rest, for a moment at least, before it's traded for rum, powder, or the promise of a warm bed ashore. Picture the treasures hidden here, Spanish silver coins that glint in the lantern light, bolts of silk dyed in colors that would make a king's eyes widen, carved ivory, spice chests, or barrels of wine captured from a merchant vessel too slow to outrun the black flag. Each piece has its own secret story, a merchant's ruined fortune, a sailor's bribe, a captain's last desperate gift to keep his life. Imagine you are a new recruit, eyes wide as you follow the quartermaster through the hold. He taps the barrels with a stick, counting shares, measuring spoils. You watch as he pries open a crate to reveal candlesticks wrapped in straw, the metal dulled by salt air, but still worth a small fortune. You feel the thrill and the fear at once. For every golden doubloon here, there is a gallows waiting in some distant port. But the hold is more than just silver and silk. Look closer. In one corner, a bundle of letters tied with ribbon. Love notes or secrets stolen from a noble's cabin. Nearby, a fiddle case tucked behind a barrel, the sailor's only comfort on long, lonely nights. A child's carved toy, an old book wrapped in oilcloth, a scrap of lace. Each item tells you that life at sea was not just greed and gunpowder. It was hope, too, and longing for home. Breathe in the hush of the hold. The ship creaks around you, ropes groan against wooden beams. It feels safe, almost womb-like, Yet you know it could flood in moments if a cannonball finds its mark. Down here, pirates dream of freedom, but they sleep next to the ghosts of every merchant's ruined dream. When you return to the deck, you'll remember this place, the shadows, the stolen treasures, the secrets whispered to the salt and dark. For now, rest your mind among the barrels and crates. Let the gold coins slip through your fingers in your imagination. No need to count every piece. The hold, like the sea, can never truly be emptied. Take a deep, steady breath and climb slowly back up from the dark hold into the cooler air of the quarterdeck. The salt wind greets your skin, and the rhythmic creak of timbers feels familiar now, a heartbeat beneath your feet. You are no longer the wide-eyed recruit you were when you stepped aboard. Now you're part of something bigger, the brotherhood that binds these men and women together, the unwritten rules, the pirate code. Picture a calm evening after a raid. The sun melts into the sea, lanterns flicker to life along the deck. Pirates gather in a loose circle, weathered faces, braided hair, a glint of gold in an ear or a grin. The quartermaster unrolls a stained parchment, the edges singed by gunpowder. He clears his throat, and in the hush that follows, he recites the code. Imagine the code, not as law carved in stone, but as a living promise. You and your crew swear to share the spoils equally, the loot divided fairly, no matter rank or fortune. You'll vote on all major decisions, which ship to chase, which port to raid, who to follow as captain, if the sea ever claims your current one. Even the captain's word can be challenged by the will of the crew. It's freedom, bound by trust. You hear the details. No stealing from your mates. That's a hanging offense. Keep your weapons in working order. A dull cutlass could cost your comrade his life. Gambling debts must be settled before a raid. No distractions when the cannons roar. Lights out by candlemark to keep watch shifts sharp. And if you break the code, justice is swift, marooning on a deserted quay with only a bottle of water and a pistol for company. Now lean closer to the fire's glow. These rules protect pirates from each other as much as from the Navy's noose. They're the bones that hold the Brotherhood upright in a world that wants to see them hanged. It is this fragile order that lets a ship of rogues, escaped slaves, outlaws, and adventurers trust one another enough to sleep soundly in their hammocks, or as soundly as one can sleep when the sea's storms whisper through the rigging. The code isn't written by kings or courts. It's written by salt and blood and the roar of cannon fire. It's recited in the hush of midnight watches and tested when temptation lurks in the hold below. It's broken sometimes too, and the gallows wait for those who forget that loyalty is a pirate's only true currency. Now, rest your eyes on the flickering lanterns. Feel the hush as the circle of pirates breaks apart. A fiddle strikes up a slow tune. Somewhere below, the sea slaps against the hull in a lullaby rhythm. You know the code now, its promises, its punishments. It will keep you alive when powder flashes and steel sings. Breathe it in. Let the code settle into your bones like the salt in your hair. Tomorrow will bring another raid, another vote, another test of trust. But for tonight, you are safe among rogues bound by rules older than any king's decree. Settle deeper into your blanket now, the sea of your thoughts calm, the creak of the ship's timbers soothing your ears. You've learned the code, you've tasted the salt and gunpowder. But even the best-kept promises on a pirate ship can splinter under the weight of greed, fear, or a captain's folly. Tonight, let's drift through the uneasy hush of a mutiny, when brotherhood frays at the seams. Picture yourself on watch. The moon hangs heavy over the restless waves, its pale glow washing the deck in silver. Below, the men whisper in hammocks. The quartermaster and the boatswain lean close in the shadows. A barrel creaks as if to join in their secret conference. There's something in the air, sharper than salt, suspicion. Why does a crew turn on its captain? Perhaps the plunder's grown thin, Too many near misses, too many close calls for too little coin. Perhaps the captain's lash fell too often, or too heavy, on the backs of those who braved the boarding ropes first. Maybe it's a rumor that he hoards gold beneath his bed, that he plots to slip away with the fastest cutter and leave the rest to swing from the Navy's yardarm. Mutiny is never loud at first. It's born in murmurs, promises made in the hush between deck planks and candle flame. A trusted word here, a conspiratorial glance there. The quartermaster, who holds the men's favor, listens. He knows when to strike, not in the daylight when the captain's pistol is strapped at his hip, but in the hush hours before dawn, when even the sea seems to hold its breath. See it now, the hush broken by the scrape of boots. The captain, roused from his cabin by a blade tapping on the door. He emerges, eyes bleary, hand instinctively reaching for the cutlass at his side, but it's too late. The mutineers circle him like sharks scenting blood. Words are exchanged, low, sharp, final. Some captains beg, some roar defiance. A few swing pistols wildly into the gloom, but powder rarely speaks sense when your crew has turned. And you stand at the edge of the circle, heart pounding like a distant drum. Will you join the new order? Or stand loyal to a man whose word once felt as steady as the North Star? Pirate law is clear. The crew's voice is final. The captain serves at their pleasure. If he has betrayed the code, the punishment is swift. Marooned with no compass, or if luck turns colder, pitched overboard to the deep where the sea keeps her own counsel. Yet in that moment, the sea itself seems to hush, as if to bear witness. The captain steps back, sees faces he sailed with, for years turned against him. He knows the code. He taught it himself. In the end, it's not the blade that breaks him, but the betrayal. Mutiny is not just a crime at sea. It's a ghost that lingers long after. A crew that's turned once can turn again. Trust, once shattered, settles uneasily like a storm cloud on the horizon. Yet the ship sails on, under new colors, a new captain at the wheel, the sea indifferent to the secrets whispered on her decks. So rest easy for now. Let the moonlight fade. The wheel creaks as the course shifts, the sails fill with a fresh breeze. You've seen how loyalty and rebellion dance in the hush of the sea. Tomorrow brings new tides, new spoils, and new choices. But for now, drift on the gentle roll of the waves, safe in the knowledge that even rogues have their rules and their reckonings. Sink further into your blanket now. The swell of the sea is softer here, the danger held at arm's length by melody and memory. The blades have been sheathed, the mutiny has faded into ghost story whispers. What lingers now is the music that knits a restless crew together, the hush and hum that drifts across the waves. Imagine yourself leaning against the mainmast after a long day's labor. The sky is a velvet curtain, studded with cold stars. Below deck, the cook's pot rattles, the sea chest clicks shut, and someone begins to hum, low at first, then louder as voices join in. Pirate songs were no polished ballads sung for kings and courts. They were rough, raw, and honest, woven from the daily grind of hauling sails, scrubbing decks, and watching the horizon for the next prize or the next storm. Some were old sea shanties, borrowed from merchant ships and naval brigs, their rhythms made to match the swing of the arms and the pull of rope through calloused hands. Others were songs of longing, sung in hushed voices when the ship pitched gently on calm waters, laments for the homes left behind, sweethearts whose letters would never reach the shifting world of salt and spray. These melodies had no sheet music, only the memory of a fiddler's fingers and the steady beat of booted feet on weathered planks. Picture the quarterdeck now, a fiddler perched on a barrel, bow dancing over strings worn smooth by years of salt air. A drummer taps a cask with the butt of a knife. A rough chorus rises from the men, voices young and old, accents from distant harbors mingling together until the lines blur. In this floating world, the songs are a lifeline, a reminder that beneath the cutthroat code and the thunder of cannons, each man was once a boy staring out to sea, dreaming of freedom. Sometimes the songs tell tales of heroes, pirates who defied kings and danced away with a fortune, whose ghosts still haunt the taverns of Tortuga and Nassau. Other verses carry dark warnings: the gallows that waits in Port Royal, the cold iron chains of the Royal Navy, the fickle winds that can snatch a ship and smash her on hidden reefs before a single prayer is uttered. But tonight, there is no gallows in your mind's eye, only the creak of the ship, the thrum of the fiddle, the hush harmony that binds these men together. The music is their bond, their escape, and sometimes their last comfort when the black flag flies high and the horizon runs red. So let the song drift through you now, soft and steady as the tide. The sea hums along, a lullaby for those who never found peace on land. Close your eyes. Let the refrain carry you toward dreams of distant shores, where the fiddler's bow never breaks and the wind always brings you home. Take a steady breath, feel the deck roll gently beneath you, and drift closer to that cramped cabin at the ship's stern. This is no place of bright banners or gleaming swords, only the hush of candlelight flickering on salt-stained planks, the soft rustle of parchment, and the steady scratch. Scratch, scratch of a quill. Here sits the quartermaster. To outsiders, he's just another pirate with a ragged hat and a blade at his hip. But to the men aboard, he holds the heartbeat of their fragile brotherhood. He is the keeper of the ledger, a great leather-bound book, its corners worn soft from wet fingers and the humid breath of the sea. His hands are rough and freckled, the nails rimmed with ink and salt. He dips his quill into a battered inkwell and lifts it over the page. The faint creak of the ship reminds him that every mark he makes here could bind men together in loyalty, or spark resentment that grows into rebellion. He mutters each name under his breath, a prayer to balance greed and fairness. Tom Barlow, 1 share plus half for taking a musket ball. Cutthroat Jack, 2 toes gone, double share this raid. One-eyed James, special cut for courage at the bow. Outside these walls, you can almost sense the men standing around a barrel, rolling dice, or mending sails with tar on their sleeves. Each of them knows that when they stand before this ledger, they must trust it more than they trust any blade. No captain rules alone. The quartermaster's book is what makes piracy, piracy. A curious democracy afloat on restless waves. On the shelves behind him lie other scraps of the ship's soul, scraps of parchment tracking the cost of casks of fresh water, who took extra rations in a storm, who lost a musket overboard and now owes a share to replace it. A chart is pinned with whalebone pins, an inked coastline no king would recognize, a private code of coves and secret bays where they might divide treasure or wait out the Navy's prowl. When a raid succeeds, the quartermaster's word is final. No man pockets a gem unseen. He counts it out, 2 rubies to the gunner who aimed true, 3 silver cups to the cabin boy who smothered the oil lamps before the enemy could see them coming. Fairness keeps the knives sheathed at night. Unfairness? That seeps through the decks like brine, rotting trust faster than sea worms through oak. You picture the men outside, lanterns swinging in the dark, murmuring to one another. How much did you get? Did he dock you for the pistol you dropped? Is he pocketing more than his share? And here sits the quartermaster, feeling every ounce of that suspicion settle on his shoulders. His pen scratches on, the warm glow of the single candle licking his furrowed brow. He pauses, rubs his neck, glances at a locket pinned to the beam above. A face he hasn't seen since they last anchored in Jamaica, or perhaps Port Royal, or maybe some other hot shore that's begun to fade into a single memory. In the distance, the sea sighs against the hull. A low creak answers it, timber shifting in the hush. Tomorrow, the ledger will close with a leather strap, and the quartermaster will stand before the crew in the wet morning air. One by one, they will hear their names called, their shares laid bare, and in that moment, the fragile bargain will hold, or snap like a rope left too long in the sun. Imagine the feel of the old parchment under his palm, dry and soft, the ink sinking like secrets into its fibers. Imagine the smell of salt and candle tallow, the warmth of the oil lamp reflecting in his tired eyes. For all the wild tales of piracy, the cutlasses, the roaring cannons, the buried gold, here in this hushed cabin, the real power lies in every line drawn, every mark made, every promise kept, or broken. So for now, you stand beside the quartermaster, listening to the soft rhythm of the quill. Each stroke writes not just an account of coin, but a bond of trust, trust that keeps the crew together on these dark, endless waters. Breathe easy. In this quiet ledger room, rebellion sleeps, for now. Outside, the ocean waits, rolling softly beneath the stars. You lie on your back in your narrow hammock, feeling the uneasy roll of the sea under your spine. It's near midnight, and the smell of brine and damp canvas seeps into every inch of your rough blanket. But there's no true sleep tonight. A storm is on its way. Above deck, you hear the low shouts of the watch, voices half lost in the roar of waves against the hull. A lantern swings at the mast, casting trembling shapes over the sails, which shudder like nervous wings. The wind has teeth tonight, biting at the edges of the rigging, testing every knot, every frayed rope that holds this fragile wooden world together. You swing your legs out and plant your feet on the planks. They're slick with salt. Your toes curl for balance. A few men still doze, faces turned to the wall, trying to snatch a few minutes of rest before the worst hits. You know they'll be needed soon enough, when the sails must come down, when barrels roll loose, when the sea tries to climb on board. Climbing the ladder, you're greeted by the cold slap of wind and a fine mist that tastes of iron. The sky is a mass of churning black, the moon a ghost drifting behind clouds so thick they seem to press down on the masthead itself. The deck tilts beneath you, alive and restless. Each wave rises like a dark wall, slapping the hull. The waters hiss and crash, echoing through your bones. Near the bow, you see the lookout clinging to the rigging oilskin cloak plastered to his back. He shouts down, words lost, but you catch the tension in his voice. He's seen the telltale foam on the horizon, white teeth in the dark water. A squall is gathering its strength. The boatswain paces the deck, lantern in hand. His face is a map of worry. He shouts for the men to lash down the barrels and double-check the ropes. You work beside him, thick rope rough in your palms, the smell of tar stinging your nose. Each knot you tie is a small promise that your world won't splinter apart when the wind finally finds its fury. Below deck, you know the powder room is sealed tight. A single spark in this storm would send every soul to the bottom in silence. The cook is tying pots and pans to hooks on the beams. The clang of metal on wood is a steady heartbeat in the dark. The quartermaster's ledger is tucked away in its oilskin, a fortune's worth of scribbled promises wrapped against the storm's hunger. Somewhere behind you, a boy no older than 15 fights the tiller, his boots slipping on the wet boards. You see the terror in his eyes, but his hands stay firm. He knows what a storm can do. He's seen masts snap like twigs, heard the sound of the sea tearing men overboard. Yet here he stands, bracing against the wind's howl, every muscle straining to keep the ship's nose to the waves. Lightning flickers on the horizon, brief and blinding, revealing the endless black teeth of the sea. For a moment, the deck is all silvered rope, pale faces, rain-slicked boards. Then it's gone, swallowed by the dark once more. You stand there, tasting salt on your lips, listening to the canvas snap and the rigging groan. You know this storm could last an hour or a day. There's no captain alive who can ride the sea to calm. So you do what every pirate does in these quiet, thrashing hours. You trust the knots you've tied. You trust your mates beside you, each one a tired shadow moving through the storm. You trust the old timbers underfoot, creaking but holding fast. And you trust that, come dawn, the sea might spit you back out, battered but breathing, salt-crusted but alive. And if you're lucky, if the sails hold, if the masts stay standing, if the waves don't swallow you whole, you'll stand at the rail tomorrow, watching the sun pierce the last ragged clouds, the water calm once more. You'll breathe in deep, tasting hope on the wind. And you'll know that, for one more night, you've outlasted the storm. For now, the wind howls on, the sea claws at the hull, and your heartbeat thuds in time with the ship's restless rise and fall. By the time the first pale light pushes through the clouds, your body feels like it's made of rope and brine. The storm has passed, not vanished, but slipped away to menace another stretch of sea. What's left behind is a raw hush, a heavy stillness that settles over the battered ship like a blanket of salt and wind-burned prayers. You stand at the starboard rail, watching thin lines of rose and gold bleed into the iron sky. The waves are no longer walls of black water, but slow, rolling hills, glassy and gray-green. Each crest lifts the hull with a tired sigh, and lets it down easy, like a mother settling a restless child. Around you, the crew is a living gallery of exhaustion. Salt-rimed beards, eyes half-closed, boots squelching with seawater. Some slump against barrels lashed tight to the deck. Some lean over the rail to watch the horizon, searching for the shape of land or sails or the promise of calmer days. Every one of them has earned this stillness. The boatswain checks the rigging for damage. He mutters to himself, fingers tracing lines frayed by the gale's teeth. His boots scuff the deck, leaving faint streaks in the salt. The canvas above hangs loose and damp, patches flapping like tattered flags. A torn line here means hours of work later, but for now, the sea is gentle enough to let you rest. You catch the cook hauling up buckets of brackish water, tossing the night's wash of fish and debris overboard. He hums a tuneless song under his breath, a small ward against the silence. Even the ship herself seems to sigh, timbers groaning in relief, joints expanding after hours of being hammered by wind and water. Below deck, the hammocks sway slowly in the half-light. Men wrapped in thin blankets snore or murmur in their sleep, dreams rocked by the motion they know too well. A young powder monkey curls up like a cat, arms tucked under his head, eyes fluttering as though he's still aloft in the rigging. You slip past them, boots soft on the creaking planks, drawn by the smell of coffee. The quartermaster guards the small pot-like treasure, pouring out precious mugs to the few who wander through. It's thin and bitter, more grit than brew, but it warms the salt-chilled belly and cuts the lingering taste of storm in your mouth. Someone plays a low tune on a battered fiddle, the notes wandering like mist in the beams of the rising sun. It's not a joyful song, more a reminder that you're still here, that the ship held, that the sea has given you another dawn. Standing at the gunwale again, you rest your elbows on the damp rail. The horizon stretches forever, an endless line where water kisses sky. Somewhere out there is land, a port where you can mend the sails, patch the hull, and spend your silver on warm food and soft beds. But for now, the sea is calm, the sails are drooping in the slack wind, and your thoughts drift like the swell beneath your feet. This is the rhythm of a pirate's life, storms and stillness, fear and fragile beauty, hunger and moments like this when the sea hushes and reminds you what it is to breathe, to stand, to see the sun rise one more time. Somewhere aft, the captain calls for sail. Men groan, stand, stretch stiff limbs, and take up the ropes again. The ship needs tending, and the wind will come back. You push off the rail and join them. Knots to tie, canvas to mend, barrels to check. The dawn has come, and you're still afloat. For now, that is enough. If the captain is the ship's iron will, then the quartermaster is its memory, a quiet mind that weighs every barrel, counts every coin, and settles every grievance whispered on the salt wind. Imagine yourself below deck, sitting on an overturned cask in the glow of a single lantern. The hull creaks around you, timbers swollen and sighing from the storm's battering. In the corner, the quartermaster's table is spread with papers, scraps of parchment, smudged ink, a cracked quill sharpened down to its final inch. He sits hunched over the ledger, a stout man with salt and pepper hair and eyes that flick up only when he senses your presence. His lips move as he counts: biscuits, dried beef, cannon shot, rum by the measure. Every mark is a story: supplies traded in the last port, stores spoiled by damp or stolen by a hungry deckhand. The air here is thick with the scent of tar and old timber, mingled with a sour note of sweat and brine-soaked rope. A rat scurries under a crate, its nails tapping like a tiny drummer boy. But the quartermaster does not flinch. He has seen worse than vermin. He's seen pirates try to cheat the weight, captains play favorites, men hoard salt pork while others go hungry. In this hush, he is judge and balance beam. When the ship docks, he'll stand on the dock with merchants and traders, weighing every cask and chest. No pirate worth his salt would risk shorting him, for the quartermaster's tally decides who eats, who drinks, who lines their purse with silver. Every few lines, he dips his quill, scratches the page, and snaps his head up to listen. Footsteps overhead, the groan of a pulley, the low hum of a shanty as the crew patches sails and scrapes the deck clean. It all filters down through the planks, every creak telling him the state of the ship. When a new recruit joins, it's the quartermaster who hands out the gear: a battered hat, a scrap of canvas for a hammock, a chipped bowl for stew. When a fight breaks out over shares, he's the one they trust to weigh the coins, to smooth hot tempers with a few extra coppers or a carefully chosen word. You shift on your cask, noticing the marks carved into the table's edge. Crude tallies from months at sea, reminders of every raid and trade, every time the hold ran dry. On the shelf behind him, a lockbox holds the crew's pooled loot. Its iron hinge is rusted, the key worn smooth by his thumb. He closes the ledger with a soft thud, binding the day's numbers with a leather strap. He looks at you, not unkindly, but with the eyes of a man who knows too much about the fragile bargain that holds a pirate crew together. "Best you mind your share," he murmurs, voice low but certain. "The sea always keeps her cut, and so do men." You stand, ducking under a low beam. The lanterns glow behind you as you climb back up to the morning's pale light. Above, the wind is stirring again, snapping the sails to life. But deep in the belly of the ship, the quartermaster's ledger keeps its quiet watch, a heartbeat of ink and promise that tomorrow there will be enough. Imagine now the wind has died. The sails hang limp against the mast. For days, the ocean is glassy. No merchant ship appears on the horizon, no thunder of distant cannon, no promise of prize or plunder. You, an able seaman turned pirate, find yourself adrift in the doldrums, the long, brutal stretches of waiting that no ballad ever sings about. There is little to do except mend the rigging, patch torn sails, scrape the hull of barnacles when the sea lies calm enough. But even these tasks grow stale. So the crew turns inward, to dice, to cards worn soft by salt air, to brawls settled with quick fists and muttered curses. The quartermaster tries to keep the peace. A fair fight is allowed, but knives are not. Yet tempers flare when food runs low or water barrels go stagnant. You watch the horizon. Every distant smudge might be a fat galleon or a ghost ship. Hopes rise with each sighting, only to sink again when it proves a trick of the light or an innocent fishing smack not worth the powder. Below deck, The smell of salt pork gone sour mingles with the sharp reek of sweat and tar. Rats scamper in the dark. The ship's cat earns its keep well enough, but sometimes even the rats run out when the barrels are empty. At night, you lie in your hammock, the boards creaking above your head, and listen to the gentle slap of waves. The same ocean that can turn violent and swallow a man whole can just as easily hold you in a cradle of endless waiting. Your mind drifts. You remember why you took to this life, the promise of freedom, of gold, of never bending the knee to a king's navy again. Yet here you are, free, yes, but shackled by calm winds and an empty horizon. The ship's cook bangs his ladle on a pot, salt fish again. No fresh bread for a week. And always the promise, just over that glittering edge, that tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, you'll sight a sail. So you wait, your hands idle, but your eyes sharp. For in the world of the pirate, patience is as deadly as the cutlass at your hip. Take a deep breath. The last lull of the wind has passed, and now you find yourself staring up at a sky, the color of bruised iron. Imagine you are a sailor aboard a creaking brigantine somewhere in the Caribbean or off the coast of Madagascar. The air tastes metallic, heavy with the scent of coming rain and the salt spray that never quite leaves your tongue. You've learned to read these skies the way farmers read fields. A rolling mass of clouds means trouble, and trouble means work. Endless work. When you live aboard a pirate vessel, you're not just a cutthroat. You're a half-trained sailor at best, and a storm is the sea's reminder that your bravado counts for nothing out here. The sails must be reefed, furled and tied down before the wind tears them to ribbons. You and the rest of your crew scramble up the rigging, fingers raw on rough hemp rope, slick with drizzle. Boots slip. Canvas snaps like musket fire overhead. There's no harness, no safety line. Fall, and the ship sails on without you. Below deck, the atmosphere is no safer. Barrels break loose, rolling like battering rams through the hold. A leak here, a loose plank there. Water pours in faster than you can nail it. The bilge stinks of stagnant salt water and rot, an invisible swamp that sloshes back and forth with each pitch of the ship. The carpenter hammers desperately to shore up cracked beams, and you can hear his cursing even through the roar of the wind above. When the squall breaks in full, the rain is like fists pounding your neck and shoulders, chilling you to the bone. There's no dry corner on a pirate ship in a storm. Hammock strip, clothing sticks, boots fill with water. Still, you brace the wheel, eyes narrowed against the sheets of spray, fighting to hold course. Somewhere aft, the captain's voice bellows above the wind. Threats, promises, prayers, it all sounds the same when the sea decides whether you live or drown. In those hours, no treasure, no gold, no promise of easy plunder matters. You are at the mercy of wind and water, two forces that take your illusions of power and scatter them like coins into the depths. Eventually, the gale passes, as all storms do. What remains is a crew too tired to celebrate, a deck slick with seaweed and tangled ropes, and a sunrise that feels like an undeserved gift. You find a patch of dry deck, or as dry as it gets, and you let your eyes close, clothes still clinging to your skin. The sea hums under your back, the sky clear again, as if it never held a grudge at all. Imagine you're sitting cross-legged on the main deck at dawn, back against a splintered barrel. The storm has passed, leaving the boards slick but warm under the morning sun. Beside you, the quartermaster inspects the ship's stores, counting casks of rum and sacks of wormy biscuit with a quiet authority that makes him, in truth, more powerful than even the captain, at least for now. In a pirate democracy, yes, democracy of a sort, the quartermaster is the trusted voice of the crew. He keeps the books, settles disputes, and decides how the spoils get divided. You'd think pirates lived in chaos, but without the quartermaster's ledger, every voyage would dissolve into mutiny and bloodshed by the second island. Picture him. Weathered face, sunburnt neck under a battered tricorn hat. In one hand, a stub of chalk. In the other, a battered slate with columns of names and numbers. The smell of stale biscuit, dried fish, and tar drifts around you. You hear the scrape of chalk and the low murmur of the quartermaster's gravelly voice counting off rations. Who ate more? Who owes whom? Who snuck an extra swig of rum when they thought no one was looking? You see, if the captain is the thunder that drives the ship forward, the quartermaster is the anchor that keeps the crew from tearing itself apart. If you have a complaint, maybe you think the captain's playing favorites with the best weapons, or you suspect someone's cheating the shares. You don't shout it at the captain. You whisper it to the quartermaster instead. He listens with one ear cocked like a dog's, nodding, grumbling, settling squabbles before they boil over into blades drawn in the dark. It's a balancing act. Too lenient, and the crew grows soft. Too strict, and they'll throw him overboard. And he knows it. Everyone does. But for now, as you watch him flick chalk dust from his fingers, there's something comforting in his steady presence. He's the record keeper of your fleeting life, the one who knows who owes what, who deserves what, and when it's finally time to weigh anchor for the next hunt. When he stands, slate tucked under his arm, the rest of the crew drifts closer, some to bargain for a bigger share, some to complain about rations. You remain seated, rocking gently with the ship, letting the rhythm of the quartermaster's calm voice blur into the hum of the sea. Imagine you're curled up just below the main deck, in the low, lantern-lit corner where the ship's carpenter keeps his workbench. It smells of salt-soaked timber, pitch, and shavings of oak, a ship's secret forest carried across the ocean. The carpenter's realm is small but vital. If the hull cracks, if the mast splinters, if a cannonball tears a gaping wound through these wooden bones, he's the one who decides whether you sail on or sink. He works slowly, deliberately, even when the ship rolls in a heavy swell. You watch his broad hands shave a plank to fit an awkward gap in the hull. Sawdust clings to his sweat-damp hair. He hums a tune you half recognize. A hymn, maybe, though no one would call this man holy. He's the closest thing the crew has to a surgeon for wood and flesh alike. If your leg splinters instead of the mast, he'll try to fix that too, or cut it off with the same calm hands, if he must. His tools are treasures more valuable than gold. Augers, chisels, caulking mallets, all wrapped in oilskin to keep the salt at bay. Each one passed from hand to hand, from the shipyards of Bristol or Boston to the floating underbelly of this roving fortress. In the hush of this space, you hear every creak, every sigh of the planks shifting under the ocean's weight. You see the resin bubbling in the pot on the brazier, black and sticky, smelling of pine forests far away. It drips into seams like a balm for wounded wood. Without this constant care, the ship would be a drifting coffin before the next storm hits. Now and then, crewmen shuffle in, boots thudding overhead. Someone's broken a spar on the foredeck. He'll climb up with ropes and wedges, humming all the while. If they didn't fear him, they might mock him. But everyone knows that without his quiet art, their freedom would vanish below the waves. You sit in the shadows, tracing the grain of a discarded plank, imagining how many storms it has weathered, how many cannonballs have splintered its brothers. Outside, the wind snaps the rigging. Inside, the carpenter wipes sweat from his brow, sets aside his chisel, and whistles you out of his way. There's always another hole to fill, another rib to mend, another piece of the ship to bring back from the brink. You feel it before you see it, the wind changing pitch, the creak of rigging straining overhead. It's the middle of the night watch, the hours when the sea seems endless and the sky presses close, smothering every reckless thought you once had of adventure. Now, you stand barefoot on the damp deck, a storm lantern swinging in your hand, casting long trembling shadows across the planks. Your oilskin cloak clings to your shoulders, heavy with spray. Salt stings your lips. There is no warm captain's cabin for you. Your bed tonight is the deck beneath your feet, the stars hidden behind swollen clouds. Around you, other shapes shift in the dark, silhouettes of your shipmates, equally weary, equally watchful. You nod to the man at the wheel, his hands raw from the rope, knuckles white as he fights the wind's push. Above, the sails shudder and snap, great wings that could carry you to fortune or to the depths in an instant. The storm lantern's flame flickers, but holds steady, a single speck of human defiance against the ocean's vast, uncaring heart. It lights your way as you inspect the lines. Run your hand along the taut canvas. Check for tears that might split wide under the storm's breath. Your mind wanders, as it must on the night watch. You remember the warm docks of Nassau, the soft press of a tavern bench beneath you, rum so cheap it tasted of vinegar. You remember promises made to no one in particular, that you'd see Spain or India or home again. But here you are, whispering a tune under your breath as rain needles your face, eyes half shut, boots slipping on the wet boards. Now and then, the sea throws up a wave that breaks over the rails. The lantern's flame hisses but holds. You brace your body against the shuddering roll, your thoughts drifting as aimless as the seabirds you sometimes glimpse at dawn. On calmer nights, you might watch the bioluminescence swirl in the ship's wake. Ghost lights in the deep, echoing your own flickering hope that you'll survive another watch, another storm, another voyage. A call comes from the crow's nest, a warning of a shift in the wind. You answer, your voice hoarse, boots thudding across the slick deck to secure a line that strains like a living thing. The lantern swings, the flame dancing shadows across your hands. It's just you and the storm and the stubborn heartbeat of this fragile ship. And somehow, for now, it is enough. Now, imagine yourself below decks, the storm above still raging, but here the air is close, thick with the smell of wet timber and the iron tongue of salt water seeping through seams. You duck beneath low beams, careful not to crack your skull on the hanging lanterns that swing with each lurch of the ship. This is the carpenter's domain, the very marrow of the vessel. You crouch beside the ship's carpenter, a wiry man with splinters wedged under his fingernails and hair tied back in a rough queue. His hammer rests across his knees, his tools laid out on a blanket to keep them from skittering away with the roll of the waves. Here he listens, not to voices, but to the creak and groan of the ship's timbers. Every sound is a word, every shudder a warning. A pirate ship, like any wooden ship, leaks always leaks. The carpenter's life is a patchwork of emergency repairs. A sprung plank, a loosened seam, a cannonball hole from a skirmish, still weeping seawater into the hold. These are his to fix. Tonight, you watch him hammer oakum into gaps, his mallet tapping a sleepy rhythm that beats against the hull's groaning protest. Sometimes he'll send you for a handful of tar, warm and sticky, to smear over the packed fibers, sealing them against the press of the ocean outside. It's a losing battle, but the carpenter accepts it without complaint. You can't conquer the sea, only bargain with it, patch by patch, prayer by prayer. By the flicker of the lantern, you see other hidden things. Barrels lashed to the beams, spare planks wedged into corners, a few crates of nails wrapped in old sailcloth to keep the rust at bay. This place is a heart and a graveyard both, a reminder that the ship is as alive and as mortal as any sailor aboard. You sit a while, listening to the carpenter's muttered curses, his breath hissing through his teeth as he forces a stubborn plank back into place. You pass in tools, the smell of pine pitch clinging to your hands. It's steady work, hypnotic in its repetition. When the hammer stills at last and the leak slows to a trickle, you both pause, the silence as deep as the black water beyond the hull. Above, the storm rages on. But down here, in this belly of creaking oak and tar, you feel the fragile heartbeat of the ship holding fast, thanks to hands like his. And yours, if only for tonight. Imagine the hold, part workshop, part desperate hope. The surgeon's sick bay is no true infirmary. It's a corner of the orlop deck, wedged between casks of salted meat and coils of spare rope. Here the light is scarce, and the air is rank with damp linen, rum, and the faint copper scent of old wounds. You kneel at the surgeon's side, your feet braced against the roll of the ship. His tools glint in the lamplight. Bone saws, scalpels, forceps, all rattling in a battered wooden chest. Many of these are repurposed from barbering kits or bought secondhand from a navy yard. Nothing is new, and everything must be kept keen. A young sailor lies on a plank draped with sailcloth. He groans softly as the surgeon ties off a rough tourniquet. There's no anesthesia here, only rum or laudanum if you're lucky, but on a pirate ship even those are rationed like gold. You hold the lad's shoulders as the surgeon leans close, voice gentle, a murmur drowned by the creak of timbers and distant crash of surf. Outside, the other pirates pretend not to listen. They hum sea shanties or sharpen cutlasses to block out the memory of what might someday be their own turn on this makeshift table. When the saw begins its work, the surgeon's eyes never leave his patient's face. He works quickly, a grim dance of blade and cloth, stopping the bleeding with hot tar or a heated iron when the job is done. A rough bandage, a swig of rum, a whispered promise that he'll pull through. Sometimes he does. Often he does not. Afterward, you help clean the tools in a bucket of seawater, then rinse them again with vinegar, the best they can do. The surgeon hums a hymn you don't recognize, a thread of softness in this world of hard men and rough seas. The injured sailor sleeps now, half propped on sacks of grain. You take a moment to breathe in the hush, aware of every creak of the hull, every slap of wave against the boards. Life and death balance here on the surgeon's blade, and on your steady hands as you pass him what he needs. Outside, the ship sails on. The crew laughs on deck, the cook stirs his pot, the wind snaps the sails. But here in the surgeon's corner, you glimpse the cost that never shows in the pirate balance, the hidden wounds stitched with rum and prayers. Imagine yourself crouched near the galley stove, really just a brick hearth set in a sandbox to keep embers from burning through the wooden deck. The cook, a wiry man with only one eye and a tattoo of a serpent curling up his forearm, hums as he stirs the day's meal. He calls it stew, but you'd hardly know it by taste or smell. Water sloshes in a battered pot, thick with lumps of salted beef that's nearly gray, and biscuits so hard you have to smash them with a belaying pin. Sometimes there's a handful of dried peas or the odd scrap of fish if the sea's been generous. Rats skitter close to your boots. They're both pest and supper on lean days. The cook doesn't mind. He's fought worse in the Royal Navy. He shows you the casks lined up against the bulkhead, barrels of ship's biscuit, salted pork sealed in brine, and a single keg of fresh water, more precious than gold. Once the water turns rank, you'll drink beer or watered rum instead, less likely to make you sick than stale water crawling with weevils. A lad leans in the hatchway, trying not to gag as the cook tosses in a chunk of pork more maggot than meat. Better protein than none, the cook shrugs. He picks out a weevil with the tip of his dagger, flicks it away like a flea. As you watch, the cook shows you how to stretch every scrap, bones boiled twice, fat skimmed and saved for greasing the ropes. The smell clings to your clothes, salt, rot, the sharp tang of brine. It becomes the scent of survival. Later, you help pass the bowls up on deck. The crew crowds around, each man scraping his share from the pot. No spoons. You slurp from wooden cups or use your fingers. Crumbs drop to the deck where the rats wait, bold as any pirate. A fight breaks out over a last chunk of meat. The cook just laughs. It's all part of the ship's rhythm. You learn to treasure any scrap of fresh food. A lime from a stolen cargo, a handful of beans from a captured sloop. Scurvy is no tale to frighten landlubbers. It waits for anyone who lives too long on salt and hardtack. The cook shows you the ship's log, rows of men who wasted away, their teeth loose and bleeding, all for lack of a simple piece of fruit. You settle back against a barrel, bowl in hand, and taste the sea in every bite. Above deck, the sails snap and the men shout orders. But here by the galley stove, there is a hush, a warmth, thin as broth, but enough to keep the cold at bay for another long night at sea. Picture yourself crouched low in the cramped passageways below the main deck, the gun deck, where rows of iron cannons squat like sleeping beasts. It smells of iron, oil, and damp wood. The powder monkey, no older than 12, sits cross-legged on an empty powder cask, eyes wide in the dim lantern glow. He tells you of his job, to carry black powder charges from the magazine up to the guns during battle. One spark, one slip, and his life, and the whole cruise might be gone in a thunderclap. He shows you the powder horn slung at his side, the leather apron meant to guard against stray sparks. His hands are always stained with grains of powder, smudged black under bitten nails. In times of calm, the cannons are cleaned and swabbed again and again, a ritual to keep rust at bay and the gun deck ready. Ropes and tackle hang in neat coils. Buckets of water stand ready for the day when battle calls. The powder monkey points to the marks on the beams overhead where gun recoil has splintered the wood in past fights. When battle comes, you see it through his eyes, the shriek of orders, the roar of guns, the smell of burning powder so thick you taste it in your throat. He darts like a ghost from the powder magazine to the gun crews, slipping through smoke and chaos. He tells you that boys like him die often, burned by flash fires, crushed under wheels, or struck down by splinters, the size of daggers. He shows you the magazine itself, a small, dark room deep in the hold, lined with casks of gunpowder. Lanterns here are shielded, the floor sanded to muffle footsteps. Silence is law. The cook's jokes and the sailor's curses fade here, replaced by the hush of breath and the creak of the hull. Each cask is a promise of violence, waiting to be unleashed. After the battle, the gun deck becomes a place of ghosts. You see where the powder monkeys gather spent wads, swab barrels, mop up blood before it sours. Salt and vinegar wash the planks, but the smell never fully leaves. They say a ship remembers every broadside. The boy smiles at you, a gap-toothed grin in the lantern glow, then hefts his powder horn again, ready for the next broadside. You leave him to his watch, footsteps muffled by the sanded floor, heart beating like the distant rumble of cannons in your memory. Picture yourself crouched beside a battered oak table in the dim light of the orlop deck, the lowest, darkest level of the ship where the surgeon makes his grim work. The smell hits you first, salt, sweat, stale blood, and the sharp tang of rum, used more for courage than for cleanliness. The ship's surgeon is no fine doctor from London's hospitals. He's likely an ex-barber surgeon, maybe with some battlefield training, maybe none at all. His tools lie before him on a stained cloth, rusty saws, curved knives, forceps blackened with age, and rolls of linen for bandages. You watch as he runs a whetstone over a blade, his hands steady despite the pitch and roll of the ship. No anesthetic here, only rum to dull the mind and strong sailors to hold the patient still. The wounded lie moaning on the deck or lean against barrels, waiting their turn. You can almost feel the planks sticky under your feet. There are stories of men who bit through leather straps, of arms and legs cut away by the surgeon's saw while the guns roared above. Imagine you are the wounded. A splinter from a cannonball has lodged deep in your thigh. Infection sets in quick in the humid salt air, and the surgeon says there's only one choice. The leg must come off or rot will take your whole body. His eyes are tired but focused, as he ties a tourniquet tight enough to make you see stars. The saw bites through flesh and bone with a rhythm, almost like the sea, a back and forth that echoes louder than your screams. The surgeon murmurs steady words, perhaps to you, perhaps to himself. When it's done, a hot iron seals the wound, smoke rising like incense in the gloom. Those who survive the table earn the surgeon's grudging respect. He shows you the saw, crusted in places despite his best efforts to clean it. You see the glass jars of leeches, the poultices of herbs and rum-soaked cloth meant to soothe fevers that too often take men before gangrene can dot when he's finished. The surgeon rinses his hands in a bucket of briny water, wipes his blade on his apron, and calls for the next. Above you, the ship creaks and sways, the wind humming through the timbers, indifferent to your pain, to the lives won or lost on this rough-hewn table. You leave the orlop deck with the surgeon steady, scraping still in your ears. Sound of survival measured in inches of sawed bone. Imagine you are perched in the crow's nest, a crude barrel or small platform lashed high atop the mainmast, swaying 100 feet above the deck. Up here, the sea stretches to the far edges of the world, an unbroken horizon that flickers between hope and threat. There's no shelter but the wide sky. The wind cuts through your rough coat, snapping the hair around your face. Below, the crew are specks. The bosun's barked orders, the slap of the sails, the slap of the waves, all muffled by the wind that howls in your ears like a ghost. Job is simple, but it demands every nerve stay sharp. Eyes straining for the speck of canvas that might mean prey or predator. A merchant vessel ripe for boarding, or worse, a Navy frigate flying no colors until it's too late to run. Sometimes, you watch for land, a dark line against the pale shimmer of water, promising fresh water and a rest from salted rations. Sometimes it's storm clouds gathering, the sort that swallow a ship whole if the captain's caught unready. Hours pass slowly. The sun burns your face during the day. The stars wheel overhead at night. If you're lucky, a crewmate calls. Up a jug of fresh water or a chunk of biscuit. If not, you swallow your spit and chew salt air until your watch is done. You feel every pitch and sway magnified tenfold. A sudden squall might send you clutching the ropes, the mast swaying like a sapling. One slip, one careless hand, and you'll plummet to the deck or the sea. Neither a forgiving landing, yet some men love it up here. The solitude, the silence, the sense that you alone steer the fate of the hunt. You see storms coming the fore. Any other. You see a merchant sails before the captain. Your voice, sail ho, is the spark that lights the pirate's powder-dotted dawn. The sky spills pink and gold across the water. The horizon shimmers with promise. You wipe sleep grit from your eyes, peer through a battered spyglass. There a shadow on the waters. Canvas, cargo, plunder waiting for bold hands. Below, the deck stirs. Men rouse from their hammocks, blades sharpened, pistols primed. But up here, you, alone. You are the first to see what fortune or doom the sea delivers. So breathe in the wind, the salt, the hush that only the highest point on a pirate ship can hold. Take a breath, but not too deep. The air here, thick with the sharp bite of saltpeter, the metallic tang of lead shot, the dusty scent of wooden barrels brimming with gunpowder. This is the magazine, the powder room, the most feared and carefully guarded place on any ship. Imagine stooping, low under heavy beams, the ceiling so cramped you must mind your head or split your scalp on an iron bolt. Here, barrels are stacked like kegs of ale, but they hold something far more volatile, the fire in the pirate's roar. One careless spark, a lantern knocked over, a nail scraped too hard, a man's pipe embers not stamped out, and the entire ship might vanish in a thunderous bloom of flame and splintered wood. Men enter barefoot or in soft shoes to avoid striking a spark. Their voices drop to murmurs, respectful of the lethal powder surrounding them like sleeping dragons. Even the candlelight is shielded by horn or thick glass, flickering in a dance of shadows. You, the powder monkey, often a boy no older than 12 or 13, shuffle between barrels, scooping black powder into flannel cartridges. Tiny, nimble fingers work fast, but careful, twisting and tying with practiced hands. A ship's cannons are hungry beasts. They devour powder by the pound when battle flares. You imagine the roar above deck, the captain shouting orders, the gun crews swabbing out the smoking barrels, the heavy thunder of iron balls hurtling toward their mark. But down here, it's a hush of scooping, measuring, wrapping. The air is stifling, stale with the promise of violence. A sudden shout above, the call to arms, and your heart quickens. You heft a leather satchel of cartridges, ready to run the narrow passageways to the gun deck. Your bare feet slap against planks sticky with tar and sweat. In this moment, you are the lifeline between the magazine and the muzzle. Without your steady hands, the cannons fall silent, the pirate's fury smothered. But one slip, a cartridge dropped, a stray spark, and you, the deck, the men, the entire black hull of the ship might vanish in an instant. So you measure. Each scoop like a prayer, each cartridge tied tight as a secret, and you thank the darkness that hides your trembling hands. Outside the powder room, the sea slaps the hull with an indifferent rhythm. The crew's laughter, the squawk of gulls, the hiss of the breeze through the rigging, it all feels a world away from this small, deadly chamber. When you emerge, your nose still stings with the bitter dust. The cannons wait. The fight waits. But for now, the magazine's breath holds, a lullaby made of powder and dread. This is where a pirate ship roars to life. The gun deck, a dark corridor lined with iron teeth. You stand here now, the cannons looming like chained beasts, their thick iron barrels streaked with soot and salt corrosion. Each one is named Widowmaker, Blackjack, Neptune's Kiss, names painted or carved to remind the crew of their purpose. When battle is near, the gun crews gather in the low, stifling space. The smell is a brew of old powder, spilled rum, and the sea air leaking through the open gunports. You hear the thud of bare feet, the creak of the ship rolling, the mutter of the gun captain checking his tools, powder horns, rammers, wads of canvas. A single broadside can turn a merchantman into a coffin. But it takes order, practice, and trust to make these weapons roar in unison. You imagine the sequence, sponging out the barrel with a damp swab to douse any embers, ramming the cartridge home, packing wadding tight, easing the iron ball into place, another wad to hold it steady. Each gun's crew moves like a human machine, 5, 6 men working in the dim glow of lanterns. When the time comes, the gun captain squints down the barrel, judging distance and drift. Outside, through the open gun port, you see the other ship, sails snapping, water foaming at its bow as it tries to turn away. Too late. Run out the guns, the order comes. The men heave on ropes and tackle. The cannons roll forward on their trucks. The muzzles poke out through the gun ports like hungry wolves sniffing the wind. Everything trembles with tension. You press your hands against, your ears bracing for the blast. The signal is given. A slow match hisses down to the touch hole. Then the world tears open. A shattering boom rolls the length of the deck. Smoke belches out in choking clouds. The cannon leaps backward, its wheels clattering on the worn planks. Your chest rattles with the echo. The smell, burnt powder, scorched cloth, iron and salt. Voices bark orders through the haze. Water buckets slosh to cool the barrels. The crew works fast, cleaning, loading, pushing the cannon out again. Fire, recoil, reload. The cycle repeats, a dance of iron and sweat and roar. The powder monkey dash through the confusion with fresh cartridges from the magazine below. Every step must be careful. A spill could mean disaster. Men shout. The ship lists under the recoil. The sea outside is chaos. But there's a rhythm to it too. Between shots, a heartbeat of silence. Then another blast. The gun deck becomes a breathing beast, inhaling powder, exhaling thunder. If you could peer out through the gun port, you'd see splintered planks flying from the enemy hull, sails. In tatters, men scrambling across the deck. One broadside, 2, 3. And the fight might be over before the pistols and cutlasses are drawn. When the last shot echoes away, the men lean against the warm barrels, sweat dripping down their soot-black faces. Smoke curls along the beams, drifting upward to the open hatches. Another prize won. If the ship stays afloat, the gun deck grows quiet again. The cannons stand silent, their iron mouths blackened with residue. You wipe powder from your brow. The echo of the roar still buzzing in your bones dot above deck. The boarding parties prepare. The next phase awaits, steel on deck boards, hand to hand, face to face. Above deck, chaos is a living thing. The pirate ship is lashed alongside her prey, a fat merchantman, sails flapping in ragged shreds. Ropes and grappling hooks bind. The ships together, the wooden hulls grinding and groaning as the sea heaves them side to side. You stand now on the heaving boards, cutlass in hand if you're lucky, or a boarding axe, or a rusty pike, anything with an edge. Around you, your shipmates shout curses and prayers, sleeves rolled up, bandanas knotted tight around sweat-streaked foreheads. The sun is blotted out by smoke and spray. A pirate captain, maybe limping from an old wound, maybe eyes gleaming. With the thrill of plunder roars the order. The cry goes up. Board her, take everything. And the wave of bodies surges forward, a tide of boots and blades. You scramble up and over the rail, feet slipping on blood and brine. The deck of the merchantman is a snarl of rigging, casks rolling loose, cargo nets torn open. Sailors and hired guards fight back with pikes and clubs, but fear weighs heavy on them. You can see it in their wide eyes. Steel clashes with steel. In the cramped chaos, the clash of cutlass against cutlass rings out. You duck under a swinging blade, slam your shoulder into a man's chest, feel the bone beneath the ragged linen. There's no grand duel. It's brutal, breathless, and quick. A push, a thrust, the wet crunch of impact. Another man down, boots slipping in the sprawl of the fallen. Above you, pirates swing from the rigging like wild monkeys, dropping onto the deck with knives drawn. The air smells of tar, sweat, salt, and the sharp copper tongue of fresh blood. But even in this violence, the goal is clear: to end the fight fast. To seize the cargo before the wind shifts, or a Navy frigate appears on the horizon. Some pirates break away to storm the captain's cabin. They kick in the door, pistols leveled. Inside, a strong box glints in the lamplight. Coins, a ledger, maybe a cask of precious liquor. Someone grabs the ship's bell as a trophy. Another hacks down a silk banner to stitch into a new flag. Below deck, the quartermaster organizes the haul. You glimpse sacks of sugar, bales of cloth, barrels of wine and salt fish. Every man gets a share, but the captain and officers take the largest cut. The wounded lean against the gunwale, bandages wrapped tight with torn linen and hoped out, and you, standing amid the plunder, feel it all. The hush that falls when the last defender surrenders, the shift from bloodshed to loot. Your heart thuds in your ears. You taste the salt on your lips, mixed with the iron of a split lip or a scrape from a blade. The prize is yours for now. But you know this life is never settled. Another ship waits over the horizon. Another battle. Another hold to empty dot when the pirates are done. They torch the merchantman if she's not worth taking home. Flames crackle, black smoke climbs into the sky. The pirate ship cuts loose, sails billowing with stolen wind, treasure. Tucked into her belly like a dragon curling around its hoard. You stand at the rail, watching the flames die away on the horizon. You survived the boarding. You hold your blade a little tighter, eyes scanning the sea for the next prize. Imagine you stand at the bow, salt wind stinging your sunburnt cheeks as you watch the coast appear like a ghost in the dawn mist. Somewhere in the Caribbean or along a distant tropical inlet, there's a cove that no Navy frigate dares approach, a sanctuary known only by word of mouth, traded in low tavern whispers, and promises sealed with rum and gold. Your ship glides past jagged rocks and coral shallows. The water here is an impossible turquoise, so clear you can see the skeletons of old wrecks lying beneath like silent warnings. Palm fronds sway in the breeze above secret beaches where pirates careen their ships, scraping barnacles from the hull, patching sails, and hammering fresh planks in place. Men leap over the sides, boots splashing in the shallows. Others drag barrels of gunpowder, hogsheads of fresh water, and crates of stolen sugar up the beach. There's always work to be done. The ship must stay seaworthy, ready to flee if the wind turns or a governor's warship appears on the horizon. Beyond the beach, tucked among the trees, stands a ramshackle settlement, rough huts made of driftwood and palm thatch, a crude jetty for small boats, and the ever-present smell of salt pork roasting over smoky fires. In these hidden pirate enclaves, men trade gold coins for food, rum, powder, and information. You slip into one of the makeshift taverns, a low shack where the roof leaks when it rains, the floorboards sticky with spilled grog. Here, you overhear the real business of piracy, secret meetings between captains, bribes paid to local officials to look the other way, rumors of a fat Spanish galleon due to cross these waters in a week's time. Pirates' haven is a delicate balance of lawlessness and loyalty. Betray the wrong man here, and you might wake with a knife at your throat. But for those who know how to play the game, these coves are salvation. They are where alliances are forged, where stolen loot is fenced to crooked merchants who smuggle it into the markets of Kingston, Port Royal, or even London itself. A man might find love here too, or something like it. Local women who keep the pirates fed, stitched up, and entertained until the next voyage calls. Children run barefoot along the sand, never knowing whether their fathers will return from the sea. As dusk settles over the hidden cove, the fires burn low. The masts of ships sway gently in the moonlit surf, shadows on the water. You know tomorrow you'll slip away again, sails trimmed, gunpowder dry, blades sharpened, back into open waters, chasing the next prize. This is the pirate's secret. Life, a hush between storms, a haven held together by gold, rum, and the ever-present threat of betrayal. Imagine it's near midnight, the wind shifting cold across the deck as you stand watch, your eyes straying for any sign of movement beyond the black waves, because tonight you know you're not alone on these waters. Somewhere out there, sails as pale as ghosts slip through the moonlight, rigged for speed, rigged for war. They are the pirate hunters, the king's ships, the privateers with letters of marque and the blessing of the crown. Their holds are packed not with sugar or silver, but with iron cannonballs, lengths of chain shot, and the grim promise of the gallows. For a pirate, the threat of capture is constant. Rumors fly as fast as musket balls. So-and-so was caught in the Bahamas last week, strung up in Port Royal with a sign nailed to his chest that read, "Sea Thief." Another betrayed by his own quartermaster, sold to the Navy for a bag of coin and a pardon. You think of the times you swaggered through the markets, pockets heavy with stolen silver, drunk on the freedom that only lawlessness can buy. But freedom is fickle, and your face, once hidden by a scarf and a battered hat, is now known in every port worth its salt. Some pirates surrender when the hunter's ship appears, hoping for mercy. Some fight to the last man. Some slip away in longboats under the cover of night, disappearing into the mangroves to wait out the new stout, but the bravest or the most desperate stand their ground. You see the ships close in across the waves, their decks bristling with marines. The first broadside roars like a thunderstorm at sea. Splinters fly, sails tear, men scream. And if you survive that, then it is pistols at 10 paces on the deck, cutlasses flashing under the dawn sun, as the hunter comes aboard. If they catch you alive, there is the trial. A short affair, usually. Witnesses who swear they saw fire on a merchantman. The judge who barely looks up from his papers. The sentence that echoes off stone walls. Death by hanging. In the town square, crowds gather to see the pirate swing. They cheer when the trapdoor falls open, but sometimes when the body stills, an uneasy hush spreads. They know this is no common thief, but a man who tasted a freedom they'll never have. And in taverns that night, whispers slip between pints of ale. A new crew, a new ship, a new captain ready to take up the banner where the last fell. You watch the horizon, the hunter's sails now just specks against the dawn. The noose will always be waiting, but for now you live, the salt wind filling your lungs, the coin purse heavy at your hip. For a pirate, the shadow of the noose is as constant as the tide. And yet, you sail on. Imagine you wake at dawn to the slap of the sea against the hull and the creak of timbers above. You stretch your limbs in the cramped dark of the forecastle, the boards above your hammock wet with sweat and brine. You swing your legs down, boots thudding onto splintered planks, and already you feel it, the looseness of your gums, the dull ache behind your eyes. Scurvy, the sailor's curse. For a pirate ship days from port, it is as deadly as a navy. Broadside. No cannonball, no musket shot. Just the slow rot from within, the body's quiet rebellion against months of salt meat and ship's biscuit crawling with weevils. Your daily meal is a ladle of thin broth, a slab of salt pork hard, as a carpenter's mallet, and stale bread so dry crumbles at your touch. There is no fresh fruit, no greens, only the memory of them, bright and sharp like citrus on the tongue. When the pain starts, it feels like your teeth have grown too large for your mouth. They loosen in their sockets until you find yourself spitting bits of blood over the gunwale at dawn. It's not just you. In the stifling darkness below deck, your mates cough and groan. Some can't stand anymore, their legs swollen and crippled like spoiled meat. They lie on their hammocks or the rough planks, eyes sunken, lips cracked, while rats scurry over them at night in search of crumbs. The captain knows, of course. He shouts for the quartermaster to find barrels of preserved lemons. But the barrels are long empty, their brine drunk weeks ago by desperate men. He tries to cheer you with talk of the next port, maybe Nassau, maybe Havana, where oranges hang heavy on the branches and green herbs spill from market stalls. But each day the wind is against you. Each wave slams your hope deeper into a bilge. When a man dies of scurvy, it is almost a kindness. The swelling stops, the pain quiets. The body that once clambered up rigging with a knife in his teeth now slips into the sea with barely a ripple. No marker, no grave, just the endless salt. Yet for those who survive, there is the next landfall. The first bite of an orange, the sweetness so sharp it makes your eyes water. The promise that you'll never let it happen again. Until, of course, the wind is right, the sails are full, and you push out to sea once more, your hold stacked with casks of rum and bales of cloth, but no fruit. There's never enough fruit, so you stand at the rail, the taste of blood behind your teeth, staring at the horizon where rescue lies hidden in the green and distant trees. A pirate fears many things: the gallows, the Navy's shot, the backstabbing of his own crew. But sometimes it is the quiet hunger in his own bones that fells him first. Imagine it: a low-ceilinged cabin tucked away below deck, lit by a single guttering lantern swinging on its hook. The smell here is thick: sawdust, brine, old blood, tar, and spirits. The ship's carpenter is not just a mender of hulls, but the crew's reluctant surgeon, the man who patches both splintered timbers and shattered men. When cannon fire rips through the boards, it does not just splinter the oak, it sends shards flying like knives. A deckhand unlucky enough to be in the line of fire might find his leg gashed to the bone, or his arm hanging by a scrap of flesh. There is no surgeon, no hospital. There is only the carpenter's bench, stained and scarred like the men who lie upon it. Imagine yourself stretched out on that rough plank table, your shipmates holding your shoulders down as the carpenter sets out his tools. They are the same tools he uses to carve replacement spars and shape hull planks: saws, chisels, bone-handled knives honed on the same stone as his adze. No sterilization, no antiseptic, just a bottle of rum to dull your senses, if you're lucky. The carpenter mutters under his breath as he works, sawing through flesh with the same rhythm he'd use on a cracked mast. You bite down on a leather strap to keep from screaming too loud. The creak of the ship, the slap of waves against the hull, these are the only sounds that drown your pain. There is no gentle bedside manner. He stitches you up with cell makers, twine, binding torn skin as if he were mending a ripped canvas. If a limb must come off, it does, quick, decisive, brutal. There is no time for doubt. Better a one-legged pirate than a corpse tossed to the sharks. When it's done, you lie there in the shadows, breath coming in ragged gulps. The carpenter wipes his blade on his apron, then turns back to his timber repairs, the ship's wounds as urgent as yours. Salt air stings your bandages, and every jolt of the sea sends fresh fire through the wound. Recovery is a gamble. Infection lurks in every splinter, every drop of bilge water that trickles into the dressings. Some men pull through. They hobble on deck with a peg leg or an empty sleeve pinned to their coat. Others slip away in their hammocks, the carpenter's work undone by rot and fever dot. It is a rough kind of mercy. A ship patched together by calloused hands. A crew stitched back to fighting shape by a man who knows how to keep wood afloat. And men alive. For as long as the ocean allows, picture yourself descending the narrow ladder into the ship's hold. Here, deep below the main deck, the air is damp and stale, thick with the mingled smells of salt water, rotting provisions, spilled rum, and the faint, musky reek of rats. This is the pirate ship's belly, the place that keeps her alive, but slowly devours itself in darkness. Barrels line the walls, salted pork, ship's biscuit crawling with weevils, kegs of water already tasting faintly of mildew. Rum casks sit wedged into corners, each marked with a crude brand: Spanish, English, Dutch, a testament to whose vessel these barrels once belonged to before the pirates claimed them for their own. Sacks of flour burst open along the seams. Fine white dust, drifting through the shadows, like ghostly fog dot, listen to the subtle scurry of claws across the boards. The rats are everywhere, bold as the crew above. They gnaw through the food stores by night and vanish into cracks by day. Some of the older hands swear the rats come up on deck to drink the blood that leaks from battle wounds. Others claim they are an omen, a sign that the ship's luck is running thin. You reach out and touch one of the barrels, the wood rough and damp under your palm, bound with rusting iron hoops. This stolen cargo is a pirate's treasure trove: food, water, rum, tobacco, spices, sometimes gold or silver coins hidden in false bottoms. But it is always a race against decay. Salted pork goes rancid, water barrels grow green and sour, biscuits crumble into powder peppered with droppings. Sometimes the quartermaster comes down here, lantern swinging, to measure out the daily ration. He curses under his breath as he finds another barrel spoiled, another bag torn open by hungry vermin. The hold is a living creature. It swells with plunder, but it wastes away in equal measure. Imagine the uneasy sleep of the men who sling their hammocks near the hold. The constant squeak of tiny claws, the knowledge that each meal they eat might bring sickness as easily as it brings strength. The pirates joke about their iron stomachs, but they watch each other closely for the signs. The griping belly, the fever sweat, the sudden, violent end that comes when the food has turned. Down here, you feel the cost of this life. The plunder glitters in the quartermaster's ledger, but here in the dark, it rots almost as quickly as it's won. A pirate's fortune is only as good as the next barrel that doesn't burst open, the next meal that doesn't bring him to his knees, and above it all, the rat's wait. Patient, persistent, picking at the edges of every victory, every sack of grain, every salted scrap of meat. In the hold, you learn to share your spoils, willingly or not. Now, imagine you step quietly into the captain's cabin, the one place on a pirate ship that feels almost civilized, though the civility is only an illusion. The door closes behind you with a muted thud. The sound of the sea softens, replaced by the hush of parchment, the creak of an old chair, the scratch of a quill across yellowed charts. Here, in this cramped room, the walls are lined with maps. Some torn from captured merchantmen, others scribbled hastily from memory, ink still fresh where the captain has added a hidden cove or an uncharted reef. A brass compass sits beside a half-finished bottle of rum. A pair of pistols lies within easy reach, one barrel half cleaned, the other still crusted with black powder from the last boarding action. Picture the captain himself, or yourself in that role, if you dare. An old sea coat draped around your shoulders, the salt stiff in its seams. Your eyes flicked from the maps to the ledger, lists of plunder divided by shares, the names of crewmen scrawled beside tally marks. There are secrets buried in those pages, deals struck in the dead of night, hush money paid to keep quarrels from sparking mutiny, the quiet theft of a greater share than a fair vote might allow. The cabin's small windows filter in the wan light of dawn or dusk. You feel the ship's slow pitch beneath. Your boots hear the distant creak of the mast above. Here, strategies are drawn as carefully as any blade. A captain's greatest weapon is not his sword, but the loyalty or fear he inspires in the hearts of his crew. Listen closely. You might hear the soft tread of footsteps outside the door, the quartermaster, perhaps coming to demand a fairer share for the men, or a disgruntled gunner, restless with rumors of betrayal. This cabin has held many arguments, many conspiracies whispered over rum and tattered charts. A few personal treasures sit tucked in the corners, a locket from a vanished sweetheart, a ring pried from the finger of a dead Spanish nobleman, a Bible with water-warped pages, more talisman than text. These reminders of a life beyond the sea, half forgotten yet never quite gone. And you stand in the hush of this space, feeling the weight of command. Out there, the deck teems with rough voices and the endless sea. In here, it's just the drift of tobacco smoke, the clink of coins counted and recounted, the gentle sway that reminds you that on a pirate ship, even power is never still. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear the secrets the walls have absorbed, the promises, the threats, the bargains struck by candlelight. It's a room of stories waiting to be told, or buried. Step now into the hidden nook that keeps this fragile wooden kingdom afloat, the ship's carpenter's corner. A small workbench tucked low in the shadows of the lower deck. There's no glamour here, no gleaming plunder or raucous song. Only the smell of fresh-cut pine and oakum, tar bubbling in a small iron pot, the rough scrape of a plane across a splintered beam. Picture the carpenter, sleeves rolled high, arms flecked, with sawdust, a blade tucked behind one ear. He moves by the glow of a single swinging lantern, its light making the tools on the bulkhead glint like tiny daggers. Chisels, mallets, caulking irons, each vital when a storm splits a plank or a cannonball gouges a hole below the WATERLI knee dot here. The rhythm is steady. Shavings curl away, falling like ribbons onto the damp boards. Tar is pounded into seams. The deck above creaks under each strike. When a leak begins, every heartbeat counts. A pirate ship can be a coffin just waiting for water to fill it. The carpenter's hands, steady, patient, calloused, are the last line of defense between survival and the sea's dark embrace. But the carpenter's skills don't end with wood. Sometimes a splintered leg or shattered arm must be dealt with too. Imagine the same steady hands, now rinsed in brine, wrapping linen around a fractured limb, or in the worst cases, readying the saw for an amputation. The smell of blood mixing with the pitch. The hush that settles when pain becomes something a man must bear in silence, for the sake of the others watching. The workbench is cluttered with scraps of rope, odd lengths of timber salvaged from other ships, nails of every size hammered into the wall. There's a sense of improvisation, nothing wasted, everything repurposed. A broken barrel lid becomes a patch for the hull. An old spar finds new life as a brace for the mast-dot and the carpenter. Himself, he's often the calmest soul on the ship. He knows every creak and groan of these timbers. He feels the swell of the sea in his bones, the way the planks flex underfoot. He hears what others do not, the whisper that warns when a storm is about to pry the ship apart. It's a humble corner, far from the chaos of boarding actions and treasure chests. But without it, without him, the whole adventure would vanish beneath the waves. So stand here for a moment. Listen to the rhythmic scrape of the playing, the soft hiss of pitch dripping into a seam. Feel how fragile this floating world truly is, and how a single pair of skilled, steady hands holds it together, one plank at a time. Now settle into the hush of the gun deck at night. Here, rows of hammocks sway like cocoons above iron cannons, each cannon secured with ropes to keep it from rolling in rough seas. The smell is an unmistakable blend: salt, sweat, gunpowder, and the damp of the ocean that seeps into everything. Imagine you are one of these weary souls, your bare feet brushing against the rough canvas of the next man's hammock as the ship rocks gently under the moon. There's little privacy. A pirate's sleep is light, a shallow doze broken by the creak of timbers or the slap of water against the hull. Sometimes it's the distant thud of a wave that jolts you awake. Sometimes it's the snore or mutter of the man beside you. The gun deck is never truly dark. Lanterns swing low, their light catching on polished brass fittings and the dull iron of the cannon's mouth. In winter seas, breath steams in the cold air. In tropical waters, sweat sticks to the canvas, making sleep slippery and restless. Some pirates clutch small keepsakes in the dark, a locket, a scrap of cloth from home, a token from a lover left behind. The rhythmic sway of the hammock is a cradle for dreams, but those dreams are often haunted by thoughts of storms, mutiny, or the noose waiting in some distant port if luck turns foul. Overhead, boots shuffle as the night watch paces the deck. Below, a rat scurries across a coil of rope, bold enough to nibble at a stray crumb. There is no true silence on a pirate ship, only layers of sound blending into a lullaby of sorts. The sea whispering through the planks, the murmured prayers, the soft groans of men dreaming of golden beaches that may never come. But in these stolen hours of sleep, this floating gang of cutthroats finds a small pocket of peace. Each breath, each swing of the hammock, each snore and sigh, they all remind you that this brotherhood, for all its violence and greed, lives and dies together. In the same cramped cradle, rest here a while. Let the cannon's cold iron be your knitstand, the sway of the waves your blanket. Listen to the old timbers speak of 1,000 voyages, while you drift in and out of dreams, just another soul sleeping above the deep. Now descend further, deeper, into the bowels of the pirate ship, where the low ceiling forces you to duck, and the air grows heavy with damp salt and the pungent reek of tar barrels. This is the hidden hold, a place the ship's officers guard closely, for here lie the true spoils of their bloody trade. Imagine yourself here, stooped among crates lashed tight with rope. Some barrels are stamped with the marks of the East. India Company tea, spices, coffee, all plundered from fat merchantmen, trembling under the Jolly Roger. Others are far more illicit, casks of stolen rum, silk smuggled past customs, or bolts of fine cloth traded in dark coves where the law's reach dissolves in the brine. If you listen closely, you might hear a faint slosh as the ship tilts, proof that behind the barrel's wooden staves lies wealth that could buy a man's freedom or cost him his life. Here, too, are secrets stowed by the crew. A pouch of coins wrapped in oilskin and wedged behind a crate, pistol hidden for the day when trust wears thin, a love letter folded and sealed in wax to keep the salt air at bay. The hold smells of damp timber, rich spices, and the sharp tongue of spilled liquor. Rats skitter over your boots, the true inheritors of any ship's feast. The lantern you carry throws strange shadows on the hull, where the ship's ribs curve like the bones of some vast whale, creaking and sighing with the roll of the sea. For a pirate, the hidden hold is a treasury and a trap. Greed festers here in the dark. Many a blade has been drawn in these shadows, a man silenced forever before he could reveal how much gold was truly stowed below. Imagine how a hush falls over the crew when a new prize is brought down, the whispered promises of freedom if only they could slip away with a barrel or two. And yet, for all its danger, this place is also a testament to the brotherhood that binds. Pirates together, a bond forged by equal shares, by the unspoken vow that every man's hand guards every man's secret. Even in betrayal, there is a strange, grim honor in the whole dot. So crouch here a while longer, running your fingers over the rough staves, the rope that binds treasure tight against the pitch-dark deep. Feel the pulse of the ship above you, the footsteps, the low laughter, the threat of a pistol's click just out of sight. This is the hidden heart of the pirate's floating world, beating slow and heavy under the weight of the sea. Step into the smoky, lantern-lit corner of the lower deck where idle hands and restless minds gather around makeshift tables. Here, beneath the creaking beams, pirates spend their stolen silver faster than they ever bled for it, rolling dice and slapping cards onto battered crates that serve as gaming tables. Picture the scene. A circle of hardened men, sunburnt faces, half-shadowed by the glow of tallow candles. One pirate holds a pair of carved bone dice, worn smooth by countless games at sea. Another fingers a greasy deck of playing cards, the kings and queens almost rubbed away by salt and sweat. Coins clink in small piles, Spanish doubloons, Portuguese escudos, a battered Dutch guilder or two, the pirate's currency of choice, passed from palm to palm in this hush of luck and ruin. Imagine yourself perched on an overturned barrel, watching the tension grow with every toss. A small fortune rides on each cast of dice. A man can win enough to buy himself a patch of land in Jamaica, or lose every share he's fought for in the space of an hour. And when the stakes run dry, desperate wagers slip from lips hoarse with rum. A man's boots, A fine coat, a pistol, or worse, his loyalty to the ship. The smell here is a thick brew of tobacco smoke, sweat, and the tang of spilled ale. Dog growls under the table, waiting for scraps. Laughter crackles like a musket shot when a fool bets on a losing hand, and muttered curses drift through the beams when another man rakes in the spoils. Sometimes the laughter turns bitter. Dice are easy to load, and cards to mark, and a flash of a blade or the butt of a pistol reminds everyone that cheating comes with a price. Listen for the hush that falls when someone stands to leave. Pockets full. Eyes follow him into the shadows. Will he reach his hammock? Or will a hand seize him by the throat before the coin can be hidden away? No code can guard against the itch for easy gain, not when a life of plunder promises so. Much yet delivers so little security. These games are more than mere diversion. They're a reminder that for pirates, fortune is as fickle as the wind. The same man who swore loyalty in battle may stake his future on a pair of dice tonight, and find himself in the gutter come morning, friendless and broke. The ship rocks gently beneath you, as if urging you to place your own bet. What would you wager, here in this dim corner where fortunes bloom and wither before dawn? Stay here a moment longer, breathing the stale air heavy with broken dreams and whispered boasts. Let the rattle of dice become a lullaby, a soft percussion that reminds you. Even the boldest pirate fears the quiet ruin of a single ill-fated. Throw dot follow that ring of steel, and you'll find yourself in the cramped, soot-dark corner claimed by the ship's smithy, a rare treasure on a pirate vessel, but worth its weight in plunder. In this sweat-soaked nook, the blacksmith shapes the edge that keeps men alive. Boarding axes, cutlasses, and the crude iron spikes for patching the hull after a skirmish. Picture it now. A barrel of seawater for quenching, an anvil bolted to the deck so it won't slide when the ship lurches, and a tiny forge glowing orange in the darkness like the last ember of a dying sun. Sparks leap with every hammer blow, casting the smith's face into shifting shadow, a mask of focus. Streaked with sweat and soot dot you stand nearby, close enough to feel the waves of heat radiating from the coals. Imagine the smell, scorched metal, damp salt air, and the bite of burning charcoal. The blacksmith's hammer falls again and again, each strike shaping a blade that may soon decide the balance of life and death on the high seas. Here, rhythm is almost hypnotic, a lullaby of metal. Pirates come and go, bringing broken cutlasses, pitted boarding pikes, snapped hooks. Some beg for a new blade to replace the one they lost in the last boarding. Some barter for repairs with a share of their loot, a scrap of silver, a string of pearls, a coin or two pried from a merchant's dead hand. Tools for survival emerge from this gloom. A dagger glinting like moonlight, a sharpened gaff hook, iron nails for sealing leaks when cannonballs punch through planking. No gold or silver shines brighter than the sheen of a fresh edge. It's said that a good blade is worth more than a treasure chest when the enemy's deck heaves into view. Lean. Closer now. Listen to the hiss as red-hot steel plunges into the barrel. Steam coils around the smith's broad shoulders like a ghostly fog, and for a moment it's as if you can see every battle these blades will face. The desperate clash of steel, the glint of a cutlass in a moonlit brawl, the weight of a knife pressed into a trembling palm. Yet when the hammer is silent, the forge dark, the blades stacked like promises in a battered crate, the hush returns. Just the creak of the timbers and the ocean sighing beyond the hull. For every pirate, this iron heartbeat is a reminder. Their strength is not just in gold, but in the sharp edge waiting in the shadows. Descend now into the heart of the ship, the hold. A cramped, dark space that smells of damp timber, old tar, and the faint but persistent trace of sweat and unwashed bodies. Imagine yourself crouching in the narrow passage, the low ceiling pressing close as you navigate past crates of salted meat, barrels of water, and bundles of captured goods. This is where the crew stows their plunder, but also where they spend hours of the most uncomfortable moments of life at sea, cramped and confined when storms rage above or during long stretches between ports. The air is thick and heavy, the sounds muffled but ever present. The creaking of the ship's timbers, the drip of condensation, and the restless murmurs of men trying to find a spot to rest. Picture the men sleeping here, rolled in thin blankets, or simply sprawled on the bare planks, their breaths shallow and ragged. Their faces bear the marks of salt, sun, and countless nights without rest. The hold is no place for the faint-hearted. Rats scurry in the corners, and the threat of sickness lingers like a silent passenger. You can almost hear the whispered prayers, the hushed conversations about home, lost loves, or the promise of gold that keeps spirits flickering. Some clutch small tokens, a locket, a coin, a scrap of cloth, reminders of life beyond the endless horizon. Despite the hardships, there's a strange camaraderie here. Shared stories, quiet songs, and the occasional burst of laughter break the monotony. But the hold is a world of shadows, a reminder of the sacrifices and endurance required to live the pirate's life. Step lightly onto the quarterdeck, the nerve center of the pirate ship. Here, the captain stands as both leader and symbol, us, figure burdened with immense responsibility and isolation. Imagine yourself approaching the wooden rail, where the captain surveys the horizon with a keen, weathered gaze, his coat damp with sea spray and his hands steady on the wheel. The captain's quarters lie just behind, a small, sparse cabin compared to the wealth plundered from merchant ships, yet furnished with objects of importance, maps carefully spread. Across a table, a navigational compass gleaming under the lantern light, a well-worn logbook filled with the ship's journey and deeds. While the crew below endure hardship and uncertainty, the captain carries the weight of decisions that affect every life aboard. The loneliness is palpable. He must maintain discipline and morale, negotiate alliances, and strategize attacks, all while wrestling with the constant threat of mutiny or capture. Picture the quiet moments alone, the captain seated by a small oil lamp, penning notes or reflecting on the precarious nature of his command. There's an air of resolute calm mixed with the ever-present tension. A man who knows that the line between freedom and doom is as thin as a ship's plank. Despite the authority, the captain's fate is tied to the crew's fortunes. Trust must be earned daily, and respect is fragile. The life of a pirate captain is a paradox of power and vulnerability, a dance on the edge of lawlessness and survival. Beneath the surface of lawlessness lies a surprising order, the pirate code. Picture yourself gathered in the dim light of the great cabin or on the open deck under the moon, where the crew assembles not only for tasks, but for agreements that bind them. The pirate code is less a strict law and more a social contract, a set of rules governing everything from the division of plunder to dispute resolution. Imagine the captain reading aloud the articles, how shares of treasure are allotted, rules about weapons on board, compensation for injuries, and the consequences for breaking the code. Despite the harshness of their lives, pirates depended heavily on these codes to maintain a fragile peace. There was democracy in decision-making, a stark contrast to the rigid hierarchies of Navy ships or merchant vessels. Every man's voice mattered in matters of justice and discipline. Think of the camaraderie, born from shared hardship and mutual reliance. Trust was currency as vital as gold. The code was both shield and sword, protecting pirates from internal chaos while ensuring they struck terror abroad. Yet the code was fluid, adapting to different crews and captains. Some codes were brief and blunt, others more detailed and formal, but all carried a sense of justice, fairness, and survival in a harsh world. Imagine the tension in the salty air when a pirate breaks the rules. Discipline aboard a pirate ship was a delicate balance. Too harsh, and the crew might mutiny. Too lenient, and chaos would reign. Punishments varied, but were always designed to maintain order swiftly. Picture the captain calling a meeting on deck, the accused standing quietly as the crew watches. Common offenses like theft from the common fund, cowardice in battle, or disobedience were met with consequences ranging from fines, paid in shares of loot, to marooning on a deserted island, or in rare cases, death. But justice wasn't arbitrary. The pirate code often required a fair hearing and the presence of witnesses. A crew sometimes voted on punishments, reflecting a surprisingly democratic process. The fear of mutiny kept captains alert, and many resorted to a mix of respect and firm command. Imagine the complicated role of a pirate captain, both leader and servant to his crew, balancing camaraderie with authority. In moments of calm, discipline was a quiet undercurrent. In moments of crisis, it was the lifeline that kept the ship from unraveling. Imagine yourself among a rough but strangely ordered crew, bound not by kings or nations, but by a shared set of rules, the pirate code. This code was more than just a list of dos and don'ts. It was the backbone of pirate society, the thread holding together a community living on the edge of chaos. Each ship's code varied, but common themes emerge. Shares of plunder divided, fairly, compensation for injuries, and rules against fighting on board. Picture a grizzled quartermaster reading the code aloud, voice steady despite the wind and waves. As the crew listens carefully, these rules kept the peace and promised fairness, a rare thing at sea. For example, losing a limb in battle meant a set sum of gold as compensation. A captain couldn't simply take all the loot. The crew voted on major decisions. This was democracy, rough-hewn and fierce, amidst lawlessness. Yet, the code also forbade stealing from the common chest, the very essence of betrayal. Such crimes were met with severe penalties, including marooning or death. The pirate code transformed desperation into structure. Without it, mutiny and chaos would have ended many voyages before they began. Imagine the creaking ship rocking gently beneath your feet as you lean over the makeshift infirmary. A cramped, dimly lit space below deck where the wounded and sick are tended, with the barest of resources. The pirate ship's doctor, often no more than a barber surgeon or an experienced sailor, works with crude tools and limited knowledge. Imagine the sharp scent of salted bandages and boiled herbs mixing with the salty sea air leaking through the hatch above. Common ailments like scurvy, caused by vitamin C deficiency, gnawed at the crew's strength and morale. Without fresh fruits or vegetables, pirates suffered swollen gums, weak limbs, and exhaustion. Infections from battle wounds were frequent, often turning deadly without proper care. Bloodletting, poultices of crushed plants, and sometimes superstitious rituals were employed, reflecting the era's limited medical understanding. Despite this, the pirate ship was a place where survival was paramount. Sailors learned to recognize symptoms, improvise remedies, and support one another through illness and injury. The fear of death loomed, but resilience and camaraderie often triumphed. Imagine the quiet groans from below deck as the doctor applies. A poultice, the flicker of candlelight casting long shadows, and the whispered prayers for health and strength. Picture yourself standing at the ship's wheel, the salty wind whipping your hair as your eyes scan the endless horizon. The ocean is vast and unpredictable, a shimmering expanse of mystery and danger that pirates had to master to survive and thrive. Imagine the heavy wooden compass in your hand, its needle trembling slightly as it points north. Without modern technology, pirates relied on celestial navigation, using the sun by day and stars by night to chart their course. The astrolabe and cross-staff were essential tools, delicate instruments that required skill and patience. Feel the weight of responsibility on the captain's shoulders. One wrong turn, and the ship could be lost in uncharted waters or fall into enemy hands. The roar of the waves against the hull, the creaking ropes, and the calls of the lookout blend into a symphony of life at sea. Maps were often rough sketches, sometimes inaccurate or outdated, making every voyage a blend of science and guesswork. Pirates also depended on local knowledge, whispers from taverns, secrets from captured sailors, and intuition honed by countless journeys. Imagine the quiet tension as the crew watches the sky for signs of storms, the thrill when land is sighted after weeks at sea, and the relief that follows a safe harbor. Navigating the unknown was both an art and a gamble, one that defined the fate of every pirate crew. As the sun dips below the horizon and the ocean's restless waves settle into a gentle lull, imagine yourself stepping down from the creaking deck, leaving behind the wild life of pirates and the endless sea. You've journeyed through the smoky taverns and crowded decks, felt the weight of a cutlass in your hand, and glimpsed the secret codes that kept pirate crews united in a world of chaos. The salt air still lingers softly, carrying tales of daring and survival. But now it's time to return to your own quiet shore. History's rough seas remind us how far we've come, from desperate scrambles for treasure to peaceful nights where the only journey is into sleep. Feel the rhythm of the waves slow in your mind, the creak of timbers soften, and your breath deepen. Let the stories fade like a distant fog, comforting and calm. You are safe now, in a place where adventure gently gives way to rest. Thank you for sharing this voyage with me. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, know that you're part of a quiet community, drifting together through history's hush. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let the calm carry you softly into dreams. Good night, and sleep well.